takes off. Then the freshman gets the corner. It's a foot race. Knocked out at the one. Now you see the talents.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Toafili in motion. Got a man down the sidelines. It's him, Toafili, and he is off. One man to beat, cuts it back, and brought down to the 20-yard line by Sheridan Jones. They're going to say touchdown. He landed on somebody. Toafili with a magic act, and they're calling it a touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Edwards with a lay. Donovan Edwards down the sideline. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown, Michigan, the Don.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Looking for an option. To the end zone he goes. Touchdown, Canes. Jacoby George.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
This time in the shotgun. Play fake. Aller to the end zone. Touchdown. Penn State. Khalil Dinkins.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
They're going to go Wildcat and snap it directly to Mappa. He tries the right-hand side. He finds Painter. That's a Clemson touchdown.
Now here's David Smoke and Craig Smoke.
All right, here we go. We start a new week. It will end up at the end of the week in August, which, of course, this week, college football programs, either today or sometime this week, will be working out practices for the fall. Seems like it's starting a little early to me, like a week earlier than that. And we will actually focus in on three programs that are all starting today: Colorado, UCF, and also Utah with guest. Craig Smoke to my right. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. I'm David Smoke, and thank you for your time. If you don't mind off the top, if you're a part of it, hit the like and subscribe button. We would appreciate that. All right, Craig, good weekend?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I'm looking forward to having my full-blown vacation as Paul's enjoying right now, and that's coming up at the end of this week. So very, very much looking forward to that, but looking forward to having a few shows between now and then. And, yeah, I got to watch a little bit of Olympics and just baseball and kind of in that crunch time where it's like I'm starting to get kind of annoyed by sort of the weight that's continuing on, but we're like where we're just in that weird little middle spot where it's still a little bit far away, and yet it's here. So that's good.
It is here. And Paul's back, by the way. He'll be with us tomorrow as a part of the show tomorrow, his return from being in Nashville for an extended weekend. All right, so here we go. Here's a list of the Big 12 programs as they open up fall workouts. Some of them reporting the day before or whatever, but here's where today Colorado, UCF, Utah, tomorrow, KU and TCU, and then everybody else will start their first fall workouts on Wednesday. And as I mentioned, we'll have three analysts today: Brian Howell, also Jake Hatch, and Mark Daniels, a voice of the UCF, who will talk and discuss these particular schools. So there's the lineup. A lot of teams. I was like, I keep thinking it's like the first full week in August, but it for some started. I saw pictures. In fact, I think we have pictures, UCF, a couple of their quarterbacks who are competing for the starting job. Of course, KJ Jefferson and Ja'Cory Brown, who came in from Miami, Jefferson from Arkansas. They are now, there's a picture of them as they were at fall practice today for the Knights.
We've heard a lot of talk this offseason about the Big 12. I think it's gotten as much attention as ever. And, you know, part of that's the ongoing realignment saga, but I'm kind of over all that. I mean, I know it's going to be a part of the conversation, but we've heard it because of that. We've heard it because of Brett Yormark's ideas. We've heard about it because of, just the general interest of the league and the fact that we cover it on a daily basis, we pay close attention to it. But we've heard all sorts of things these last few months, and I'm just ready to see what does it look like on the field. What does it look like with Utah inserted and Arizona State and Colorado and mixed with these other teams, and you take Oklahoma and Texas out of the equation. It's going to be really interesting, and I'm seeing a lot of, going back to the realignment thing, a lot of which league is better, Big 12 or ACC, and, you can go in circles on that. You can go, however many directions you want to with that argument, but ultimately it's proven on the field. Ultimately, I don't care who makes more money. I don't care who has better recruiting classes. I don't care who has better geographical time zones for whatever statistic. I want to know who wins football games and who's raising trophies at the end of the day, and that's what the Big 12 needs to do more than anything else, They need to win games, and I think the same is the case for the ACC, although it doesn't necessarily solve all their problems. And we know that the SEC's done that for a while now, and the Big 10 just won a national championship. So, the Big 12 getting the drums of war going and getting practices started, and let's see if one or some of these teams can actually make some big noise on the big stage of college football this year.
All right, so there's a list of who is starting when, and we'll have analysts throughout the week as we can fit them in our schedule. DeQuan Finn was one of, I think it's 14 players from the Big 12 who's a part of the Maxwell preseason watch list. Now, there's a lot of lists that will be giving out their watch list over the next several days, including into next week. Today, the Maxwell Award, 14 players from the Big 12, including DeQuan Finn, are a part of that list, and he's getting a lot of hype. We might have DeQuan, by the way, join our show tomorrow. Just quickly, the names included, again, there's like 80 players overall, but you have DJ Giddens, Taj Brooks, Noah Fafita, Ollie Gordon, Garrett Green, Corey Kiner, DeQuan Finn, KJ Jefferson, Cam Rising, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Daniels, R.J. Harvey, Avery Johnson, a note on him in a minute, and Devin Neal. No surprises with those names being on the Maxwell Award preseason watch list.
Not sure if maybe somebody's missing because that's just a lot of names to digest and not be cross-checking while we're doing it. But it sounded like most of the big names that you would expect, and not quite one person per team, but 14 guys. That's those preseason watch lists. There's 80, 100, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, nearly every school represented by at least one player. DeQuan Finn makes sense for Baylor in particular. I mean, that's the guy that's going to be the engine in the car, even though he still hasn't been named the starter yet. But I fully expect that at some point in time, and I think a lot of those other names have been talked about quite a bit more. I feel like Finn's almost flown under the radar a little bit just because people aren't expecting Baylor to be very good, but he'd be maybe a surprise candidate to make some noise. But a lot of those others, Shedeur, R.J. Harvey, Cam Rising. I mean, Neal, a lot of those names we've talked about at length. Avery Johnson, was he on there?
Yep.
I'm sure he was. Yeah, I like I said, I wouldn't cross-check him. But, yeah, those sound like all the right names. And, we'll see who can live up to that. And I just talked about making some noise as teams, as programs on the national stage. I mean, another way to make some noises individually, and certainly there are some good individual players in the league this year that I think I don't know if they're going to be sitting in New York at the Heisman ceremony, but I think there's some guys that could compete for the Maxwell and a lot of other various awards as well. Taj Brooks, another name that you should probably mention, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's a strong list, I think.
Yeah, it's 14 of the 80, which is pretty good when there's 4 overall autonomy 4 conferences, and there's a handful, by the way. Genty at Boise State, Motti at Texas State, and a few others that are not a part of what is the Autonomy 4. I thought this is just cool to bring up. Keenan Hall, running backs coach at Baylor, is on a heater, as is Baylor, when it comes to recruiting. They got a class of 2026 commit. That's a long time down the road, and a record-breaking running back, Ryland Morris, over the weekend. Keenan Hall put this up. I am a product of my environment, South Oak Cliff in South Dallas. I refuse to let my upbringing define me. There were plenty of opportunities I could have gone down the wrong path, but God kept me on straight and narrow. I'm the new standard. I broke the cycle. I'm the change, earned, not given. So there's Keenan Hall. Thought that was pretty cool for Keenan because he came out of an area that, again, statistically you don't know. it's like rolling the dice on whether you're going to come out of it with success. He is on a phenomenal run right now, and so are the rest of the Bears staff and coaching staff when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, the 26 class, not that far off. That's not this December, but next December.
I know.
So,
yeah,
I know it sounds that way in your head.
Yeah.
But it's actually just the class that's about to take precedent over everybody else as the season starts, because 25 is pretty much locked up. There's obviously some more moves going on, and there will be over the next few months. But, 26 is now on the radar firmly, believe that or not. And, I'm glad he's able to set a good example for other people out there, and especially those that came from backgrounds like his. He's on a heater right now, as you mentioned, and they're now starting to dip into the 26 class and add there, and they're on a really good run. And that Dave Aranda, we're paying players quote, got a lot of play, but turns out that what he said was true. I mean, everything else they had done was all good in terms of what athletes wanted to see. The missing piece was that at the end of the, relationship, that negotiation process or that offer process, hey, we like the staff, we like the school, we like the facilities, we like the education, we like everything, but how much are you going to pay us? And that's the part that was missing, and now that it's not missing, well, they've clearly had some big wins here recently, including again this weekend, and possibly even more in the coming days. So I know that Caleb Burns, the Texas Tech linebacker commit, was on campus, and so those are, we've heard a lot about just straight up commits, but are some flips in the works as well. I mean, with the run they're on right now, it wouldn't surprise me. So life is pretty good, and Keenan Hall is a big reason why.
All right, Baron Morton, Texas Tech quarterback, he told Don Williams, I'm back to throwing the same motion that I've always thrown. Remember, he had the shoulder injury last year, and Tech has had the last 2 or 3 years issues with multiple quarterbacks going down. I had to tweak it in the season just to get through the season. Now I can go back to the way I've been throwing the ball, and it just feels so much better. Joey McGuire was on with us, a couple of weeks ago, and mentioned one of the things they must do is win better, play better on the road, but also keep their quarterbacks healthy. Everybody in college football has to do that. They have not been able to do that much the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really know what's what with Baron Morton, because I don't know that we've really seen him play prolonged football without being dinged up or young or whatever. So if he's fully healthy, that's obviously great news. And as you said, they've had a lot of trouble at the quarterback spot, just keeping a guy, in the lineup. And Tyler Shuck, they finally moved on from that situation, and he's got another great opportunity at Louisville. But I think that that's a guy that you take out of the puzzle, and you hope that you have a little bit better luck in terms of naming a starter and having that guy actually be the starter for the majority of your games. But now it's on Baron Morton to stay healthy, and clearly that's been an issue for everybody in red and black, manning up at that position. So he's a guy who was highly rated coming out of high school, and a lot of people seem to be high on. I don't know what to make of his ceiling, because I just don't know that we've seen enough of him and enough of him healthy to really know where he fits, and certainly are not just going to put him at the top, with the Jalen Daniels and the Cam Risings and those guys, but where does he fit in? I don't really know, so I'm excited to see him fully healthy and see what that can look like.
I think he's a gunslinger. I think he fits that offense perfectly, and hopefully he can stay healthy. Here's a note about former Baylor commit, and then Oklahoma State commit, and now TCU commit. Schobel from Columbus High School. He was committed to Adam Schobel, committed to Baylor, then Oklahoma State, now TCU. His father, Matt, was a tight end at TCU. His uncle, Aaron, was a defensive end. They both played in the NFL. He now has gone with a little tour around the Big 12. This is probably officially, you would think, his landing spot with lineage at TCU.
I would hope so. Spot number three, I would hope this is the landing spot. This is also part of why I don't like interviewing recruits as much. We sit here and had a big old conversation with his dad, who's his high school coach, and big old conversation about Baylor and this and that, and that was, 7-8 months ago, and then he's 2 schools later. So that's why we don't always love talking to commitments as they happen. But, good for him and his journey, and his childhood favorite is now where he gets to go play college football. So that's great for Adam Schobel. I would assume this is the last landing spot. I mean, I don't know what else you could be looking for at this point, especially if it's truly your childhood dream. I'm not sure why this wasn't the go-to originally. Maybe it was just a situation of Didn't TCU had a quarterback commit and then didn't SMU flip him or something like along those lines?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, so they were booked up and now they are freed up. And here's a guy who grew up loving the Frogs, whose dad played there. And so the matchup's now perfect for, I think, all sides. So, yeah, I would assume this is where he sticks. And I'd assume that TCU doesn't have a whole lot to worry about flip-wise. But, yeah, third spot and hopefully his last.
All right, so there we are with that. Avery Johnson, pretty nice little apple in style in Manhattan, Kansas. Custom, one-of-a-kind lavender Corvette. That is so sweet. That's Avery Johnson, quarterback at Kansas State, showing off an NIL deal for him. And
that's very cool. I mean,
really
they love
cool.
the lavender up there, and I know that there's other people trying to get it more incorporated into uniforms and things like that. Seems like it would be a pain to get in and out of on a daily basis, but I'm sure you're not really thinking about that once you're inside of it. So, yeah, that's pretty sweet, and no denying who the big, tall, long blonde hair and a lavender, what was that car? What was
Corvette.
it? Lavender Corvette. Like, yeah, no denying who that is when they're driving down the street or when they get out of the car. So, yeah, definitely one of a kind player and vehicle in Manhattan, Kansas.
TCU is looking at bringing on Dana Holgorsen as a part of their staff. He, of course, the former head coach at West Virginia and Houston. There were thoughts that he might look at other particular schools. I think even, I'm not sure if it was Oklahoma State or somebody else involved, but TCU's already had former Boise State head coach Andy Avalos, and then also linebackers coach Ken Wilson. They're on the staff. Houston will play at TCU October the 4th. I saw Joseph Duarte put that up, targeting former Houston and West Virginia head coach Dana Holgorsen to join Sonny Dykes on his staff.
Yeah, I don't know this late in the process kind of why that wasn't something you did in spring. Maybe Dana just wasn't interested in it, or what. I just I'm curious about just the timing of it. But with the season here, like if you're going to make a move, now's pretty much the last time to do it. So I'm sure it's potentially a really nice gig for him to, get some football work in and not just be totally on the sidelines throughout football season. I know that's hard for a lot of coaches when they lose a job or when they step down or whatever. That first season without having all that activity can be a bit weird. So I'm sure Dana's enjoyed that, but as the season nears, also probably interested, or at least have people interested in wanting, his talents, his services. So I think that'd be a solid move for Sonny Dykes and the Frogs. Obviously a bit of a Texas Tech reunion there from Leach's old staffs. And, I think that makes sense for a lot of reasons. And Dana obviously knows the Big 12 about as well as anybody. So that checks a lot of boxes and would be a good one for Dykes and the Frogs.
All right. Now, during the time when it was a mess for the Pac-12 and during the time when there were a lot of reports that everything was going to be fine because of what the Pac-12 university presidents, ADs, or whoever was saying, and one guy that we thought maybe took a pot shot at us or two, which is fine, John Canzano does a podcast with John Wilner, who we've had on many, many times. He wrote an article, and it says, were the Pac-12's ears ringing, Pac-2's ears ringing at Big 12 Media Days? And here was a quote from an article with Washington AD Pat Chun. Down at the bottom, Chun didn't say for sure about a handful of schools, TV value, etc. So John went to a couple of the world-type data, TV rankings or whatever. Now listen to this list. This is not saying this will happen, but there could be what eventually is a best of the rest conference that tries to put something together. And a lot of these are people who have been left before at the altar or have not been contacted. But this is interesting because a lot of our listeners or viewers have come from these particular schools. San Diego State, Colorado State, Memphis, where's Metal? South Florida, UTSA, North Texas. I got this note from somebody that's in a part of North Texas Athletics Administration. Also, the academies, Boise State, Fresno State, UNLV, of course, brand geography. This doesn't mean that this is simmering, but I thought this was interesting because Pat Chun was discussing this, and this was out there, and I got the heads up. I said, I'm going to put this up there because this hits almost everybody that feels like, well, what about us?
Yeah, I think that's they're exhausting all their options to try and figure out what works best for Washington State and Oregon State moving forward. And one of the logical options is to connect with some of those schools that are listed there. I can't read all of that, but I think there's only so many ways you can go. You can't stay independent for more than a couple of years because you can't afford it. And then there's also the option of basically praying for a life raft. You hope that the ACC falls apart to some extent, and that opens up some spots. And because of the previous PAC movements, we'll be Stanford's travel partner, and we'll be a part of that whole West Coast contingent. That's one of your hopes, is that the ACC would open its doors. There's also the hopes that the Big 12 would want to go further west. Although, I wonder at what point you just keep diluting, and you do need to add something at some point that adds money, because you've made a lot of moves that have had people we'll push off the money here and we'll push off the money there just to get teams in, and I don't think you can really afford to keep doing that. So if they're additive, then yeah, bring them on and give some more travel partners out west. But I think that right now is still option C or D in terms of importance for the Big 12. So I don't think that's what they're trying to get done right now.
Well,
and then there's, a couple of other options, I guess, that could be out there. And one of them is, getting together with the Mountain West on a more full-time relationship basis, not just this arrangement for a couple of years. But how that would work is one of the big questions of who would absorb who and what would you call it and all those things. So, yeah, I mean, and then just in general, hey, here's all the best teams that can't get into the top category per se, but are much better off than a lot of those quote-unquote underneath them, and put them all together in a bowl and mix them together. That can make for a pretty good conference. And, yeah, if you're talking Boise State and Oregon State and Washington State and some combination of a lot of those other schools, then, yeah, that hits on a lot of our listeners. And I think that's something that has been talked about and would be quite interesting if it got to that point.
Well, one of the other parts of what Pat Chun said was he goes, both of those schools, talking Oregon State and Washington State, are powerful schools. He had a relationship. He was at Washington State for some 6 years before moving on to Washington, when a lot of the changes occurred in the last few months. Now, on Friday, the House versus NCAA settlement was at least put into play. There's a lot of questions. One of the ones that I saw with A. David Hale from ESPN, and we'll have Christy Dosh from Forbes magazine, Forbes business sports writer. She'll join us today at 4. But one of the things that David Hale kind of highlighted earlier today, and I'm not putting this up on graphics or whatever, is that if all Power 4 max out and go from 85 to 105 scholarships, which is what has been said, that's 20 new scholarships or 1,380 new scholarships. 1,400 scholarship players. Where do they come from? Garrett, where will they come from?
I mean,
if they add each of them 20 to what they have now.
I have no idea, honestly.
How about group of 5 schools? How about the possibility that high school recruiting, which has been kind of not nullified but dampened a little bit, how about the possibility that now opens it up for at least early on with high school football and recruiting? The G5s is what he said are going to get killed. First, tons of fringe players who might have gone to Ohio or Troy will be going to Ohio State now and Auburn instead. Also, worried about how many players enter the portal. Get ready for that to skyrocket. Every coach I've talked to expects 50 to 60% in the portal after the Power 4 scholarship guys who barely got practice reps as they want to move to a different roster.
Well, that's the thing I've been saying the entire time is, you can sit here and have 120 scholarship players, but guys want to play football. That's the whole point, is to play football. And I'm sure there's some guy from somewhere with some situation where he'll take the bench time just to be at Miami to make the $50,000 that he was promised or whatever. But I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of similar guys who are like, that was cool for a year. I couldn't crack the lineup. They're bringing more guys in and recruiting over me. I could sit here on the bench and be depth for $50,000 more, or I could actually go play and maybe make a mark and maybe get in the NFL and make millions. Guess what you're not going to do? Guess what you're not going to accomplish by sitting on the bench? You're not going to get to the NFL and make millions of dollars. So guys still need to play football. So, yeah, I think there's going to be some log jams in certain years where, Alabama's got 120 scholarship players or whatever, and there's clearly going to be a lot of guys who aren't seeing the field, and yeah, that's going to crowd the transfer portal, and I think just take away from the G5s on more of the way that it is now. It's going to be a log jam. I just don't know how to exactly explain how it's going to be a more of a log jam than it is now. You're just going to have more guys just sitting on a roster for a single season or jumping in the portal halfway, 3/4 of the way through than you do now. And I think that's going to be the biggest difference. But, yeah, ultimately guys are going to want to play. And guess what? Schools aren't just going to have a bunch of dudes sitting there not accomplishing anything and just paying them tens of thousands of dollars just to be depth pieces. Like, if you're going to get paid, you're going to still have to be working, and you're going to have to fend off the guys that they're recruiting over you on a yearly basis. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be anybody just sitting back getting fat and happy without one party or the other going like, no, we need to do something different here.
Well, there's a lot of different comments on what was released, and there was always a nugget or two that was hidden that Christy Dosh will help us with it a little bit after 4. For example, David Hale in his comments. Let's say 40% of the $20 million revenue sharing is going to football. That's $8 million. Spread that over 105 players. That's $76,000 per player. Spread that over 85 players. It would be $94,000 plus. So $18,000 a player when those last 20 guys are not really impact guys. Most coaches I've talked to, he said, would much rather prefer to heavily invest in their 2 deep, the 48 guys, plus a dozen or so developmental players. Paying $105 nearly doubles the total you're investing in or pissing off if you're not investing in that, because it'll kill you on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, I think it's going to be problematic in some ways. For example, as you mentioned, just the bigger schools loading up and having 20-plus guys they wouldn't have had otherwise, that otherwise might have been at Georgia Southern or Southern Miss or whatever. Yeah, I think that's going to be problematic, but I don't think it's just going to stay that way. There's going to come issues with that. Like I said, like guys sitting on the bench not getting playing time, or you're paying money to a guy who's not worth that money after a year or so. So, yeah, there's some complications. There's no perfect answer on how to sort all this out, and that's why there's been a lot of back and forth about the roster limits themselves, and I don't quite know where to fall on it, because I think having 105 full scholarship guys is pretty silly. I don't think that's necessary. I think NFL teams get by with half that on a weekly basis, and I get that their setup's a bit different, but I don't think you need 105 guys on scholarship, but I also think it's great for the players. It is going to create some problems, though, and that could be stuffing your cabinets full of talents to keep them away from other teams or what. But, yeah, the G5s are certainly standing in line, surprise, surprise, to be the most negatively affected by this, because a lot of guys who otherwise would be at that level and getting playing time will be for a year, sitting on LSU or Baylor or Texas Tech's roster in the fourth string spot, and then hitting the portal in the spring after they make a cool $20,000 or whatever it is to be on that roster. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting portal activity come this fall when we see how that starts to actually operate and work out.
He said the long story short, the impact on budgets, transfers, G5s, walk-ons, end-of-season depth is going to be dramatic across the board, likely to take effect a year from now, meaning coaches already recruiting with this in mind despite having zero idea what details will actually look like. Fun times. One of the things about this that we also need to look at, it's the same thing with the college football playoff expanding to 12. Can we let it go through one time and then react accordingly? Of course, college football has been reacting accordingly now for the last the last 3 to 5 years. Ross Dellinger had this one. Boosters are prohibited from entering into NIL deals with athletes unless they can prove with agreements are genuine with rates that align with similarly situated individuals with comparable NIL value. Now, this has been at least discussed over the weekend about what all this means. Initially, it looked like any kind of booster that wants to do an NIL deal with an athlete, it would have to kind of pass the smell test. This is not those involved with NIL. This is if you're a specific booster. And there was concerns that if anything over $600 would have to kind of go through the system. I think this is a lot less of a deal than people thought. And we will have a couple of NIL collectives on this week to discuss it from what they're hearing too. Now, players who have been in college football for the longest as we enter the 2024 football season. We've discussed a lot of these young men. How about this one? 9 years. Remember, we've discussed this? Cam McCormick, tight end, Miami. Cam Rising, Utah. Also, Jermaine Lole, who's been at 2 or 3 schools, including from Arizona recently to Texas. Tyler Shuck. We know about his history with Texas Tech. And now, of course,
Oregon before that.
And Oregon before that, yes. And now with Louisville. Grant Keithy, one heck of a player at Utah.
Brent Keithy.
Oh, did I say Grant?
Yeah.
I say, Brent Keithy. Okay, I'm sorry. Alan Bowman, we know his history, Texas Tech, Michigan, and Oklahoma State. And then also there's Gary Bohannon, who's been now at both USF, before that, of course, Baylor, and now at BYU. Those are the players with the longest tenure in college football with COVID years and extra years, et cetera. That's the list of those longest tenured players in college football.
Utah standing to benefit from Brent Keithy and Cam Rising both being back and fully healthy and good to go. That's a big part of why you anticipate them being such a good team this year. Alan Bowman, not on this list. Is that right?
No, it is.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I can't read. It's the text is too small here. Okay, I see the Oklahoma State logo.
Alan Bowman's the next from the bottom. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's hard for me to see. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big-time veteran, especially quarterbacks in college football right now because of the COVID years, and I think we're about to cycle out of that. But, you know, on the one hand, it's cool. On the other hand, I think it's like, dude, graduate and get out of here already. I mean, we're talking 7, 8, 9 years in college. Like, college was fun, but I didn't want to be around for 9 years. I mean, my God. I mean, if I was playing football or baseball or something, maybe I would change my opinion. I would just think you'd be sick of it by now. But, yeah, one last hurrah for a lot of these guys, and there won't be another era, I think, quite like this. If there is, then there's either been another pandemic and the whole world's on its head again, or college football is drastically different from the sport that we grew up watching, and you're having, you know, basically no eligibility anymore, which I would completely lose interest, to be honest with you. And I know there's some people that feel like that's down the road, but that's not college football. That's not. So this is a strange time to see 7, 8, 9 deep seasoned guys, this many in 1 year, but that's where we are. So, yeah, this is the remnants of the COVID era, I think, is starting to cycle out finally.
Finally, this. We try to show you on occasion the stadium upgrades, renovations, etc. Duke introducing plans for a Devil's Deck at Wallace Wade Stadium, in-game DJ. A lot of schools have been doing that. Yard games, access to beer, seltzer, exclusive access to open standing areas, all-you-can-eat food, non-alcoholic drinks. Tickets are $45 in advance, $35 for students. Duke looking to spice up their stadium for upcoming games. I don't know if that starts this year, or I believe they got a little bit of work to do to make that happen. It might be next year.
Yeah, I would assume they'd announce it for this year. Otherwise, you just announce this next year for next year. But, yeah, I don't know.
Let me check on that.
Yeah, I would think if it's not for this year, what's the point in announcing it? I think that you could put that off. But there's a lot of schools that are doing these types of things to freshen up their game day experience. We saw what was that entertainment district last week? Who was that? Whatever school.
Tennessee.
Yeah, there's this isn't what they're doing, but this, you know, the whole game day experience, the entertainment districts down by the campus and stadium and stuff like that is starting to be a lot of the newer sort of trends, and I think you've got to find ways to get people to put butts in seats, and that maybe that's not as much of a problem at Tennessee. It's more of a luxury to have, you know, what they're going to have set up wise, but for a lot of others out there, I mean, it's hard to get people to come to games as much as you used to be able to. So you got to attract them somehow, and obviously liquor sales or alcohol sales have been a big part of that. So not surprised to see another team joining that fold. It's also a good money generator as well for those who can partake in that. But yeah, good for those fans. They're going to have a good time, I'm assuming, this year, and if not, then next year. But got to spice things up, and as much as we just love watching college football, it is an investment to not everybody lives in town, and so you got to have ways and find ways to get people to be drawn to come to games, even if your team's not very good. And so selling beer and having themes and doing all that's one of the ways to do that, and you're seeing a lot of that.
Well, yeah, I just think it's a little new. Some people like it, some people don't. By the way, it is for the 2024 season. That makes sense. Available, all-inclusive tiered deck spans several sections, actually 7 sections, accommodating over about 1,500 fans, offers a unique social experience, tailgating while watching the Blue Devils play at home. So there you are with what they've done with that side of the stadium. All right, again, 16 teams in the Big 12, 3 of them opening up today as far as their practices with Utah, also with Colorado and UCF. We will hear from 3 different analysts and voices who cover those programs as we will look through that the rest of this week. By the way, UAB quarterback Jacob Zeno, speaking of being on a tour, was at Baylor, now at UAB. He'll join us as a part of tomorrow's program, and there's a good chance Daquan Finn is a part of tomorrow's program too. I think we got it all, Garrett, right?
Yes,
Craig Smoke, David Smoke, 365 Sports, back with Jake Hatch on Utah opening up full camp. This is 365 Sports.
It's the heat of summer, but the real heat is what you're cooking on the grill, smoker, or oven. Waco Custom Marketplace can be your go-to playmaker for summertime grilling. You can't go out and eat? Be your own chef. Custom ordered, cut ribeyes, sirloins, fillets, New York strips. Focus on high-quality beef at a competitive price. Waco Custom Marketplace has fresh deli cuts with sliced turkey, ham, pepperoni, or corned beef. Fresh seafood, salmon, shrimp, mahi-mahi, live lobsters, and great priced chicken products, whole birds, tenders, chicken breast, and wings. Smoked items unique to Waco, house-made bacon, summer sausage, boudin, hot links, and German sausage. Every seasoning for every meal or occasion, grilling, baking, or frying. Your hometown grocery store with canned goods, pastas, fresh baked bread, buns and chips, sauce, condiments to pickles, charcoal, and lighter fluid, cold beer and wine. The best kolaches in Waco, mouth-watering cinnamon rolls, here for you in the community, helping avoid the long lines and crowded stores. Serving quality local products to the Waco community and beyond. Go online for more of the weekly values on their Facebook page. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Erie Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Make this the summer of Ram at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home in a 2025 Ram 1500 Lone Star for just 2.9% for 72 months, with no payments for 90 days. Plus, first responders get an extra $500 off at Allen Samuels.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at Baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Jake Hatch, someone we've gotten to know over the last 4 years, covers Utah and also BYU. BYU will start their workouts practices on Wednesday, but Utah today. Jake with KSL Sports Zone joined us on 365 Sports. Jake, thank you very much for your time as always. I believe you and I, when we were on the phone as I was headed to the studio, mentioned that there were some assistant coaches available, maybe some interesting nuggets, anything other than what normally is the first day of practice and access?
Well, I guess the biggest thing to take away from their availability today that I would add is that these coaches are very confident in this Utah squad. I had a chance to talk with a number of the assistants, and we don't get to talk to them all that often. It's about twice during training camp to catch up with them. And Luther Ellis, Lewis Powell, and a couple of other assistant coaches all express that they believe that their respective position groups are the deepest they've ever had at Utah, and they think that it will contribute to Utah being as good as maybe they've ever been if they enter the Big 12 this fall.
Jake, what was the reaction to Morgan Scalley for the second time being promoted to head coach in waiting? And what I mean, I guess, is that sort of starting a ticking clock in some people's minds that Kyle Whittingham's not long for this world?
I do think that there is a timeline, yes, that a lot of people are envisioning of how long Kyle Whittingham is going to be on the job. I think it absolutely has caused that clock to begin ticking. Now, does that happen after this season? Has that happen 3 years from now? I think it was a very natural thing for Utah to designate Morgan Scalley once again as his successor. I think it'll ensure that they continue to be able to have that stability on the coaching staff, obviously keep the continuity there when it comes to recruiting. But it's not a big surprise to anybody up here in Utah that he's been designated as the successor. But yes, the clock is ticking now as to how long Kyle Whittingham is going to be head coach at Utah.
All right, he has been so consistent and probably has had some really, really good teams. What do you think? Is it he seems like he's 20 years younger than his age. Do you think some of the changes in college football, like the realignment, he's even said to us twice that, hey, we're not done. There's more changes to come. Do you feel like it's that, or you just feel like it's time maybe in the next 2 or 3 years to move on?
I think so. I think he realizes that he has kind of run his course. Now, if you guys weren't aware, this will be his 30th year at Utah, both as an assistant defensive coordinator and obviously as the head coach of the University of Utah football program. There are not many coaches in the sport of college football who are able to enjoy 30 years at the same university and have coached like Kyle Whittingham has. It's been an incredible run. I just think he sees that he's going to be 65 soon. His father passed away relatively young in his early to mid-60s, so he's kind of, I think, looking at the thing saying, you know what, maybe I want to spend some extra time with my grandkids and my family and enjoy the good life. He's made a lot of money as a head coach, obviously, so he's not hurting for cash at all. So, yeah, I do think he's looking at maybe some of the changes on the horizon and saying, you know what, maybe it's time for me to step aside and let a younger coach take the reins here.
Jake, as you know, a lot of the focus, especially for those like us that are covering on a more regional or national basis, we're not in the nitty-gritty, in the weeds like someone as yourself is on a daily basis with Utah. So we're talking, big picture stories are Cam Rising returning from health. How healthy is he? But what is something that is a bit more in the weeds and detailed about this Utah team that not a lot of people are talking about, but that you find to be one of the more important topics about this team?
How deep and talented their defense is, particularly their defensive front. They've got legitimately guys, I think 6 defensive tackles alone, I think are NFL caliber guys. And that obviously is going to lend itself to them being extremely physical and extremely tough to run the football on. They have the same thing, similar situation at defensive end. I think that defensive line is a hallmark of what Kyle Whittingham's tenure at Utah has been, is they've just traditionally pushed out defensive linemen who are NFL ready, but it's about as deep and talented a defensive front as I can remember in my 15 years in sports radio here in Salt Lake City. And if they are really that talented on the defensive front, it's going to lend itself to the linebacking core and the defensive secondary being that much better because they don't have to necessarily worry as much about having to rush the passer with extra blitzing players.
Do they let Cam Rising loose, or do they still kind of like have him in bubble wrap?
Are you talking in practice, or are we talking in game?
Well, I mean, in games you got to go, right? I mean, there's
Sure.
no question they got to let him go full throttle, and sometimes you get hurt if you don't go full throttle.
Yeah, Andy Ludwig spoke to the media today, and we asked him a similar question to that, and he said, you know what, we're going to try and make sure that he is as protected as we can make him in practice, but there's just an element to being able to go out there and do the things you do as a quarterback, to go out there and make plays, and that's exactly what Cam is. He described him as a playmaker, and they said they were going to coach him up to say, hey, you got to be maybe a little bit smarter because he suffered 2 really debilitating knee injuries at Utah that have really hampered his time there. They're coaching him up saying, hey, you've got playmakers at tight end, at wide receiver. You got some good running backs behind you and an offensive line that looks very, very talented. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. It doesn't have to be all on you all the time. Yes, there's going to be times that he's going to obviously tuck it and run, but they're saying that they're going to be very judicious with regards to getting him hit in practice and more particularly calling quarterback design runs and the like.
Jake, between the transfer portal and just traditional recruiting, who do you feel is the most important new face on the roster this season?
Well, that's a good question. I would say you've got a pair of freshman tackles, offensive tackles, Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, who both got experience last year, but they're going to really, I think, emerge into their own this year. You don't traditionally see two. I know that they're going to designate, I think, Lomu as a redshirt freshman. I think Fano might be the same class. They didn't play a ton last year due to some injuries and other things, but when you have the confidence to start 2 guys at offensive tackle who are redshirt freshmen or sophomores at the oldest, that means you have got a lot of talent, you believe, on that offensive front, particularly on the outside, because those guys have to exist on an island and go up against some of the best pass rushers in the entire country. We all know that the Big 12 got some very, very good pass rush specialists across this league. So I think those 2 offensive linemen, I know they're not necessarily official newcomers to this team, but keep an eye on those 2 tackles, Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano.
Is there any doubt that of the 4 schools that have moved into the Big 12, and I think it's official August the 1st later on this week or sometime that first couple of days in August, that Utah is separated, well separated from Arizona because of the questions in the coaching change, even with Fafita and McMillan back, et cetera, and then Arizona State, and then Colorado, the unknown, because we just don't know how much they've improved?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think Utah, they're far and away the most accomplished and obviously designated as the favorite in the Big 12, according to that media poll that came out ahead of Big 12 Media Days. They are the class of the newcomers, obviously. Arizona, number 2. I would say Colorado, 3, because you are saying it's a little bit of a wild card. We don't know what we're going to get with Coach Prime, but there's a lot of confidence there in Boulder that he's going to be better in year 2 with the Buffaloes. And then, Arizona State, I think it's an uphill climb still for them down in the desert, but don't be surprised if Kenny Gillingham in the next 2 or 3 years really emerges with a pretty good team, but you have to give him the time to get his guys in place. We
know that there's been a little fun back and forth between Utah fans resistant about the move to the Big 12 and, the other side of the Big 12 fandom of you're lucky to be here and all of that. And a lot of that's just kind of having fun, Jake. But what is kind of the feel, for better or worse, from the Utah fan base as we start to get a month out from the season and you start to actually get ready for playing some games? Are people excited about it? Are they hesitant? How would you describe the mood around the Utes and being in the Big 12 this year?
I think Utah fans are excited to be the favorite in the conference. They want to come in and make a statement, obviously. And yes, there's been that back and forth between the fan bases on social media. Everybody's seen it out there. But I think the overarching theme I have sensed from Utah fans, both online and also people that I know in my day-to-day life, is that they're excited to be part of the Big 12. They believe that they should be and will be the favorites to win the Big 12 title this year. They're hoping to go to the college football playoff, and if they accomplish all those goals, I think the Utah fan base would be very happy and content members of the Big 12 Conference.
So we mentioned Scally. Craig brought that up, and we know that he had been kind of ready for that earlier, and then they had to wait a little bit, kind of a downtime. Tell us more about Morgan Scally that maybe most people don't know too much about.
Morgan Scalley is about as Utah man as you're going to find. He grew up a Utah guy, played there, was an all-conference safety for the Utes, then went into coaching, and he's been coaching Utah the entire time he's been a coach. I'm telling you, if you want a like-for-like replacement as much as you possibly can get with Kyle Whittingham at Utah, it's Morgan Scalley. He bleeds red, quite literally, and he will put on for that university, unlike many people will. It's kind of a similar situation to what Kalani Sitake is at BYU. Kalani grew up a BYU fan, played for Lavelle Edwards in Provo, and then the whole venture he made in his coaching career was to get where he's at right now as the head coach at BYU. So, assuming when Morgan Scalley ascends to the top job there at Utah, you're going to have two of the best alums from these respective universities going head-to-head. And, yeah, Morgan Scalley, he is as Utah a man as you are going to find out there.
It's football season, basically, Jake, with all the practices beginning, 16 schools in the Big 12, just the 3 today. In your opinion, of the schools among the 16, give me a team that perhaps you think is in the middle of the pack that has the best chance of, when we get to mid-November, late November, playing for the Big 12 championship, if a lot of things go well.
If things go well, watch out for UCF, I think. I think with KJ Jefferson at quarterback, I think with Gus Malzahn's offense, they've got a lot of things going for them. Now, the question mark for UCF is that defense. Ted Roof takes over as the defensive coordinator, might be co-defensive coordinator, but he comes in with a lot to prove on the defensive side of the football. But I think that UCF offense, if things break the way that they could, that could be an offense that can score with anybody. Now, they may give up some points along the way as well, but it would not surprise me if UCF gets off to a hot start. You could see that carry on. And obviously with BYU and Utah both traveling down there to Orlando to take on the Knights, they're going to be a player when it comes to the Big 12 race.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate your time. KSL Sports Zone, both Utah, BYU. We had them on, of course, when they changed in football coaches at Utah State. Jake Katz with us on 365 Sports. I like the way they play the game. When they were in Waco last year, and they just had nothing. Of course, Rising wasn't playing. The offense wasn't going anywhere. And they just waited and waited. They didn't change who they were, whether you're up 15, 10, 12, whatever, or down 14. They just kept, as a lot of coaches, this is probably old chopping wood. They just kept it, and they eventually turned the table, got a big pick, and put Johnson in it, kind of almost a zone read type situation, and they just didn't panic. I like the way they did that.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I also don't think they had much choice. They had no offense. Jaquindon Jackson, who's no longer there, I mean, he had some runs here and there, but they didn't have any quarterback play that was really worth speaking of. And so you had a stalemate of sorts, basically brewing. And Lord knows, even on their third-string quarterback, that was still on par with what Baylor's offense was rolling out there that early in the season, and for the remainder of the season for that matter as well. So I think they got very fortunate that they didn't play a better team on that day, because they were ripe for getting beat.
A better offensive team for sure.
Yeah, they got very fortunate that somehow they played a team who was as below average that day offensively as they were. And they clearly had the better defense. And, yeah, they just stuck in there and kept fighting, didn't panic. To their credit, to what you're saying, they were on the road. It was hot here in Texas, and they just kept doing their thing and plugging away, and eventually, made a play or two that tipped the scales in their favor. And that's all it takes sometimes. So, yeah, they're going to be in every game. They're going to fight till the end of every game, and they might not be the best in a certain area, but those other areas will carry them as best they possibly can. And if you don't put them away, or you don't make that play and you let them stick around, then odds are they're eventually going to be the one to make that play. And that's why they've been so good for so long, is they're just strong, they're smart, they're consistent, and they believe in what they do, and it works out for them 99% of the time. So, yeah, they're going to be a tough out. You look at that schedule, I can see where you give them a win in every single contest. I can see where you give them 2 or 3 losses. They don't play every single quote-unquote like top team in the Big 12 this year in the regular season, because it's just impossible with all the teams there are now. But I do think there's enough games that are going to be competitive that if they're not careful, they can get knocked off. I don't think it's just going to be a walk in the park, as some believe, for Utah here in year number 1. But there's definitely a lot of reasons to believe that if you're on their side of things, because you didn't have quarterback play really to speak of last year that was to your typical level, and you were able to get a really good season out of it despite that. And so with Cam Rising back and Brant Keithy back, not to mention the other additions you made throughout the offseason, I think there's just a lot of reasons to be optimistic if you're Utah that this is going to be a pretty good year for you.
There's a couple of games in late September they have to win. Of course, they open up with Southern Utah, then Baylor, Utah State. But that's a kind of a nice little rivalry game with Utah State. But they have 2 games in September back-to-back, at Oklahoma State and Stillwater, and then home against Arizona. That might be kind of a nice little twosome right there to see what they do, where they are. And then later on, of course, their rivalry game with BYU in the first or maybe the second weekend in November. Around the corner, Christy Dosh from Forbes magazine. She writes about sports and business. She will join us. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Jack McKenzie, of course, in studio today, too. And also, we'll have Emery Winter dialing up 365 Sports tonight on the CW. Paul's back with us tomorrow. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI in the Central Texas marketplace just off of I-35 in the southern part of Waco. Average MRI is $1,100. Theirs is $497 or less every single time. $497 or less every single time. State-of-the-art imaging machine. They will find out what your doctor wants to know because they need an MRI. They've requested an MRI. They want to see a little more or a lot more evidence of what may be hurting you, whether it's a disc in your lower back or it's a muscle or a ligament in your knee or your shoulder, something that is bothering you that's creating pain, and at times you can't sleep at night, you can't function during the day, you just don't know how you're going to get over it. So your doctor wants an MRI. Ideal MRI saves you a ton of money, but it's not like just some little one-stop thing. They have state-of-the-art equipment, tech specialists, imaging machine, and $497 or less every single time at idealmri.com.
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. At a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. In a long business meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line. With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, bad dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoke. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Christy Doss, someone we have had, columnist for Forbes, writes for Sports Business and much more, joins us on 365 Sports with Craig Smoke. I'm David Smoke. And Christy, thank you so much for your time. By the way, congratulations. What? You have a new niece, is that correct?
I do have a brand new, I guess she's now 4-day-old niece.
That's awesome. Yeah, the thrill of that. Thank you for your time. So, breaking down the House settlement for back pay and revenue sharing, you wrote a lengthy article on it a couple of days ago. Let me ask you about a couple of things first. There was this flare-up over the weekend of reporting and people kind of going home that there was a section about boosters who did anything above $600 would have to get cross-checked by, I don't know who it would be. Is that going to affect any boosters involved with NIL, or is that just making sure that there are no straight cash payments?
So the way I read it, there's two sections people are kind of mashing together here. I think there's one on mandatory reporting, and it's saying that any NIL deal you do of $600 or more, you're going to have to report to some entity. We don't even know what that entity is yet. However, that section doesn't say anything about approving or disapproving deals or vetting them, just that you're straight up reporting it. And it's getting a little bit confused by a later section. This is a 133-page document, so there's a lot there. And there is a later section that says the NCAA may, it doesn't say they have to, it says they may adopt rules that look at deals in terms of fair market value. And it also talks about it being for products and services that are for profit. That section people thought was aimed at some of these NIL collectives that are 501c3 charitable organizations. But that provision is not a mandatory part of the settlement. It may never come to pass. So what we have right now is just mandatory reporting of 600 or more. But the way I read it, there's no vetting of those deals. It's just for informational purposes only.
Christy Doss with us on 365 Sports. So in the end, the back pay, that goes back to, we've seen the timeline. How much of the percentage of the money, the 2 billion minus attorney fees, will most of that, or 75 or so percent of that, be the football players and men's basketball players?
Yeah, there's a pretty big percentage of that. They're saying football and men's basketball players on average are going to get about $135,000 each. Women's basketball, about $35,000 each. And then there will be some sort of, I would call them nominal amounts given to Division I athletes in other sports. There's going to be a formula that decides that for each individual athlete. So you'll see it really varying from one school to the next and even from one player to the next.
Now, the scholarships being moved from 85 to 105 and more, who does that affect the most as far as, in your opinion, and maybe who gets hurt the most if that's the case?
I think you see most of the Power Five going to the 105 for football. I don't think that will surprise anyone to hear. That also means you probably got to make some changes on the women's side because of Title IX. And so a lot of the emails I've gotten have been from parents of female athletes who are all excited because they've seen the roster limit for, say, women's soccer or volleyball be increased, and they think now their daughter is going to get a full scholarship. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's going to vary from school to school. They're going to have to make some changes on the women's side to offset what they do on the men's side. But we're not talking about every athlete on every roster going to full scholarship, although that's allowed now. I don't think most schools are going to have the funds to do that and also engage in revenue sharing.
So you mentioned football, men's basketball, and also women's basketball. Moving forward with the revenue sharing, is it going to be pretty much that same percentage moving forward within that particular way?
I have talked to so many schools, and again, it varies so much from school to school. Some have said that their plans are to look at what percentage of their revenue comes from football versus what comes from men's basketball, women's basketball, break it down by sport and then share revenue proportionately according to what share that sport generates. The problem is Title IX attorneys are saying that's not going to work, that's not going to comply with Title IX. And instead, they're suggesting you have to be equitable in the sense that if you decide to revenue share with, say, 150 male athletes, you need to also do it with 150 female athletes. But most of them are conceding the amounts won't have to be the same, that they should be based on some sort of fair market calculation. But every single school is going to do this different, and they probably should, because if they all decide to do it the same, they could end up in the middle of another lawsuit accusing them of collusion.
Can you see all of what has been the buildup of this with what Jeffrey Kessler has said, among others? Can you see this being like locked in and moving forward, or is this still going to be delayed more and more as they tweak what's in the settlement?
Most settlements go pretty smoothly from this point, but I don't expect this one to. There's already been some opposition from Division I schools who felt like they weren't part of this conversation. There's already athletes coming out upset about it. There are agents and attorneys and collectives who are upset about it. So I would expect that when the court goes into the phase where they allow people to voice their opposition, there's going to be quite a bit of that. And it'll be interesting to see what Judge Wilkin does with that, and if she wants tweaks to the settlement or if she goes ahead and processes it as it is right now. We won't really know that probably till early 2025 at this point.
With the revenue sharing, we know there's NIL, and that's separate, correct? Than the revenue sharing, that's going to be a separate money fund to the, or I don't know if I should say it that way, but money pipeline to the players?
Absolutely. So the revenue sharing is essentially going to be capped. We believe that cap for the first year is going to be somewhere between $21 and $22 million. But that doesn't count any NIL money that's being generated, whether that's a collective that's helping athletes get deals, athletes getting them on their own, or an interesting part of this settlement is that athletic departments can now serve as agents for the athletes, or exclusively or non-exclusively. So the athletic department can go out and source deals for these athletes now. And all of that would be in addition to revenue sharing. And there's no limit on the amounts for NIL.
So we're working on an NIL possibility with what we do on game days for Baylor after their game's over with a post-game show, and discussing an NIL possibility with a player in the post-game. With what we now see, and we're using the GXG, which is heavily involved now with Baylor and has been, made a difference for them. Do they stay, are they now under the umbrella of the athletic department? How does that work?
So each individual athlete will get to make the decision about whether they want to sign an agreement with the athletic department. And I would imagine there will be some athletic departments that decide not to do this at all. They don't have the staff, they don't have the bandwidth, or maybe they don't want the legal liability of representing student athletes, but they're going to have that choice. And then the athlete could choose if they want to be represented, and it can be on an exclusive basis or non-exclusive. I would be surprised to see many of those exclusive deals where you're saying, okay, only the athletic department is going to represent me for NIL. Frankly, I don't think that makes sense for student athletes, and I don't expect to see much of that.
The revenue sharing of what an athlete gets for being on scholarship, for example, cost of attendance, value, new scholarships, does that fall under the revenue sharing, or is that separate?
Parts of it are going to. So they laid out in the agreement that things like the Alston Award and other benefits that are offered sort of above and beyond that full grant and aid, in addition to the new scholarships being created because of new roster limits, there is going to be some of that that's going to be counted towards revenue sharing. So it's a max of $2.5 million in Alston awards that can be counted, and $2.5 million in additional scholarships that can be counted against that revenue share.
Will this be an individual school-by-school decision, or will conferences take their schools under their own, I guess you could say, wing, and have the conference decide how things go?
I'm doing some consulting work with a few schools and who engaged us months ago, and we've been talking about what this might ultimately look like, and no one is expecting the conference to set those rules. I think that's inviting lawsuits related to collusion, and I think every school's resources and abilities look a little bit different. So right now, everyone I know is proceeding as if it's going to be done on a school-by-school basis.
There's a reason we have you on, because of how you explain things. So I did see, and I mentioned this, earlier in our interview, that when the booster information came up and $600 was that number, I believe it was Livy Dunn's mother who went on Twitter and said something about, if they're going to do that, then they need to go to every student at every college campus who makes anything more than $600 and make them report that too. Is that a complicated issue?
Yeah, I teach NIL classes at University of Florida, and I get cheerleaders and dance team members and just regular students on campus who take my NIL class because they have large followings on social media and they're doing brand deals themselves, and they, figure they can learn the same sorts of things the athletes are learning how to do, and they don't have anyone looking over their shoulder or making them file about what sort of deals they're doing. So it is a bit of a double standard, and I understand that it exists because you probably don't have the same situation, with maybe just an average student on campus who happens to have a big social following. You don't have a booster who's trying to entice that person to go to school there. What do they care who's going there and majoring in English or journalism or whatever? And so you don't have the same influence you get in athletics. So I get what they're trying to do, but I also understand Livy Dunn's mother being upset about it and what she's saying, because it's not fair. It's only being done to athletes.
Will the revenue sharing be available to student athletes more than 4 years, since that's the normal average? Although now we put up a list earlier in our show, there's like 8 guys that have been in the college football for 8 or 9 years. Will it be capped, and is that going to be an issue in court?
So that's in the section that I was talking about earlier, where it talked about some rules that the NCAA may make, not that they have to make. And one of those is to say that you can only have revenue sharing for 4 years of eligibility, and those years have to be in 5 consecutive calendar years. So that's not officially a rule and won't become a rule just because of the settlement. The NCAA would have to separately pass that. That's one of those I could see them passing. So we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Christy, when a player gets NIL, and we've seen this before, and I think there's an article even a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember exactly where I remembered reading it, but I brought it up. And you get right in the middle of all this. If somebody signs an NIL deal, wherever they go, whatever sport, let's just say football, and they get themselves sideways with the law, or they decide to leave, how does all that work out in making sure either somebody's reimbursed or that the athlete fulfills their obligation?
Yeah, each individual contract handles that a little bit differently. I've seen ones that try to restrict the athlete to living in, say, a certain county, and that's so that if they transfer, they won't be able to complete the terms of their contract and they won't receive the rest of their payment, because the NCAA has said that these payments can't be dependent on you being on a roster. They're not supposed to be based on whether you play or not or whose team that you're on. And so collectives and brands have gotten creative about what they've put in their contracts for this. It is pretty common to see the morals clause like we see in a lot of pro contracts, where if you are, say, arrested on a DUI, a brand or a collective would have the ability to cancel the contract and not make any future payments to you. But what I think is going to be really interesting going forward with the revenue sharing, and we're already seeing seeing this with some collective NIL deals, is going to be what we call clawback provisions, where say they've already made certain revenue sharing payments to you, and then you decide to transfer, that they can actually essentially claw that back, that you can have to pay that back. Or it might look more like what we see with coaches, where the school you're going to has to pay to get you out of the contract at the last school. So it'll be interesting to see how everybody decides to structure those contracts.
So when college coaches leave, there's a buyout. For example, let's say it's a coach that signed a 5-year, $45 million deal, whatever it is. If they leave a year or two or whatever early, they have to pay a buyout. Will that happen with the student athlete?
I have heard athletic directors say that they intend to put those provisions in their contracts. Now, when I tweeted about that, there were several agents and attorneys who responded to me immediately to say they would never allow their client to sign that. So we'll see where that's headed. But I do know that schools are actively looking into what their contract is going to look like and wanting to include provisions like that. So I would imagine they're going to end up at some schools, maybe not everywhere, but I bet somebody's going to try it out.
All right. What about the possibility? We hear about employment, that the student athletes will become employers, collective bargaining. Does what you saw in any way change whatever momentum or lack of it might happen?
There is a provision in the House settlement that talks about what happens if athletes, some of them or all of them, become employees and collectively bargain. And it essentially says if they're able to do that and they come to an agreement that's better than this one, or if they want to incorporate this one into it, that's all well and good. But I would say that if they were collectively bargaining and the agreement was not going to get them the protections and the money they're getting under this, then the attorneys in this case are going to have a problem with it. So for the next 10 years, I would say this settlement's going to exist in some format, either on its own or eventually being incorporated into a collective bargaining agreement.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but there was, when I saw this settlement as it started to pick up steam, that I even saw some things written about this will keep any more lawsuits from happening when it comes to the NCAA. That's not true, is it?
That's unfortunately not true at all. In fact, there's still multiple cases. I have an entire page on my website where I try to keep up with all of the open cases. Now, 2 cases got consolidated into this one. The Hubbard and the Carter cases are part of this settlement. So those 2 are wiped out. But there are a number of other cases out there about NIL, about employment, about antitrust law that are still open and pending and are still issues for the NCAA. And not only are those still open, but attorneys that have already read this settlement are already talking about all the different kinds of lawsuits that can come out of this settlement and some of the choices they made that athletes had no ability to weigh in on. So I would expect not only do we have those outstanding cases, but there's probably going to be some new ones as well.
Let's say a school has 15 or 25 sports, and I know endowments take care of it, like Stanford has an endowment, and a lot of schools do, that might take care of some of the scholarships and athletes. Is every student athlete on scholarship guaranteed at least a penny when it comes to revenue sharing?
No, absolutely not. I would expect that there will be large numbers of student athletes who get nothing because schools, I don't think, are going to be able to afford to give everybody something across the board, at least not and maintain their current level of sports sponsorship. So absolutely, I think we'll see sports being cut at some schools. And, you know, like I said before, a lot of the parents who are reaching out to me are parents of Olympic sport athletes who are trying to figure out, is their kid going to have a full scholarship now? Because now everyone on the roster can have a full scholarship. And they're really disappointed when I tell them no, that it may be that nothing changes. It may be that they get even less than they are currently getting. It really is going to vary a lot from one school to the next. And when you're being recruited, you know, you're going to want promises that take you through more than just 1 year, because the budget could get adjusted every year and you could find yourself in a really different situation from 1 year to the next. So, you know, one thing that worries me about all of this is the level of education that's going to be required for parents to help their high school student athletes navigate this during the recruiting process. And especially right now, if you've got a kid that's going to be starting fall of 2025 and they're going through recruitment right now, the schools don't have any answers for you. So you're making a choice on where to attend based on limited information because the schools are still finding out what this is going to look like. They're still getting advice from their Title IX attorneys. They're not going to know what kind of compensation packages they're going to be offering, but you're going to have to make a decision before that information is probably settled. So I think in particular, folks who are starting fall of 2025 are going to be in a tough spot. But we've got the transfer rules now that allow you to more freely transfer. So I would imagine that the transfer portal will remain very active going forward.
130-something schools in the FBS, 350 plus when it comes to the NCAA, when it comes to the men's basketball programs that compete for the tournament or try to get to the tournament. How many of those, and I guess a percentage, this is bad news?
I would say if you're outside of the Power Five, it's probably bad news. I've talked to a number of athletic directors and commissioners from the Group of Five and then also from non-Division One football playing schools, non-football schools who are Division One. And they're saying that they really didn't get to have any say-so in what this ultimately looked like because only the Power Five conferences were parties in this case. Mm-hmm. And so they were the only ones who were kept abreast of what was going on during the course of the settlement talks. And now everyone in Division One is going to have their distributions from the NCAA docked in order to pay for this back pay that's part of the settlement. And so you've got schools who are going to pay for part of this settlement, and it's not going to be any of their former players who are actually getting the money. It's going to be largely players at Power Fives that are getting the money. So I would say any institution or athlete who's not in the Power Five, this settlement's probably not great for them.
Why would a student athlete opt out of the settlement?
If you opt out of the settlement, you're preserving your right to bring your own case or be potentially part of another case. And so if you feel like this doesn't adequately solve problems you individually have, maybe you could have made a lot on your NIL prior to the NIL rules changing, or, perhaps you're a football player with a big household name and you feel like you could have done better on this. I mean, I think there are some circumstances where it makes sense to opt out. I don't know how many of those opt-outs we'll have. It's one of those things people are still getting educated on. And unless you have an agent or an attorney or somebody in your family who's one, I'm not sure where you'd be getting the advice on this. So I don't expect a ton of opt-outs, but there will probably be a handful.
How do your students in your NIL class at the University of Florida, how do they digest all of this? Is it something that it's like they can't wait to get more information, or are they sometimes confused too?
I feel bad for my summer school students. I'm teaching two different classes, an undergrad and a grad class this summer. This is their last week of classes. Exams begin into this week, beginning of next week. And I had to send them an email Friday saying, guess what? We have a new settlement. But I'm trying to limit what I'm actually testing them on. I told them, look, I want you to be aware of this, especially my grad students. A lot of them work in athletic departments. And so I sent them that article I wrote breaking down the settlement. And I said, I want you to know this, but I'm not going to test you on it because I don't expect them to upend everything they've learned all semester based on this new information and be tested on it 5 days later. That doesn't seem fair to me. But for my students next semester, we will definitely have a lot more of this.
I know you got to go, but another question or two. Of the schools or athletic departments or parents of student athletes or agents or whatever, which of those particular segments of people contact you for more information or consulting work?
It's a toss-up between schools and parents. I mean, I've done consulting work for nearly a decade with schools. And so, a lot of those folks already know me and I've done work with them in the past. The parents is a new one for me. I had never really heard from a parent until NIL happened in 2021. Now I run a whole Facebook group of almost 1,000 parents where they can ask me questions about NIL and now revenue sharing. And so I've been a little more in that parenting space lately. And I get probably 25, 30 emails a week from parents asking about NIL. And now with this revenue sharing, I've probably gotten 20 to 30 in the last 48 hours asking, my daughter's a sophomore. She plays soccer at this school. Is she going to get a full scholarship next year? And important to note, none of this goes into effect for the 2024-2025 school year because this settlement can't even be approved until early 2025. So all these changes people are hearing about, they're for the 2025 school year. So we're not even quite there yet. And unfortunately, I would say the people who can be excited about this are football, men's basketball players, and women's basketball players at Power Fives. Outside of that, I'm not saying it's bad, but that's who can be excited about it.
You founded your business, Sports Biz Miss Enterprises, in 2012. Can you fathom in the last 12 plus years what you have seen yourself when it comes to just college athletics and how business has changed?
Oh, I was practicing law full time when I started business and college sports and started writing for Forbes, and the Ed O'Bannon case was happening. And I remember saying that this was never going to happen. They were never going to be employees. They were never going to do revenue sharing. And I really believed it at that time. And obviously it's happened now, and I embraced it a long time ago and knew it was coming. But, that's a big change over the past decade or so, from athletes essentially having nothing but their scholarship to, we went to unlimited meals, and then we went to cost of attendance, and then Alston Awards, and then NIL, and now revenue sharing. I mean, that's a lot of change in a decade.
And they finally got the video game back about that same amount of time from when you first started. You're doing a great job, Christy. It's great to have you on the show. Thanks for the knowledge and insight. We appreciate you a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Christy Dosh. You can go to Christy Dosh, KristiDosh.com. Again, she founded the Sports Biz Miss Enterprises back in 2012, and then turned the website Business of College Sports into a real business. And it can get a little bit convoluted, a little bit confusing. I'm glad we had her on because I had a lot of questions. I did read a lot of the responses when it comes to the settlement, but I didn't dive into it because I don't have that kind of legal mind. Thank you, Katie Rader, by the way, for the super chat with a compliment on the segment with Christy Dosh.
Yeah, that was an excellent interview. I stayed out of the way because this stuff doesn't work in my brain. Like when I try to process it, I don't get it. So I learned a lot in that segment and thought you asked some really good questions, and she was prepared with an answer for everything, and obviously knows this all very well, and is clearly a leading voice that you want to talk to if you were somebody like some of the parents that she mentioned who have a lot of questions, because it's hard to understand. It's really complicated, and this is not like why most of us are college football or basketball fans, is to follow stuff like this necessarily, but it's a part of where we are right now because of where we were for so long was not what it was supposed to be. And so there's a lot of change happening, and this is one of those huge changes, although like every other thing, it comes with 1,700 more tentacles on it so this isn't the end all be all. This doesn't even stop any lawsuits whatsoever, and this doesn't do this or that, and that's the part that's kind of discouraging, but it's also encouraging that they're taking steps forward that should have been taken long ago. And I do find it interesting that some of the people that brought some of these cases are like swimmers and things of the like, and I just wonder if they knew at the time of you're not even helping, you're actually hurting yourself in the long run. I've seen that proposed on Twitter, a time or two before, and sometimes that can be disingenuous, but I really do wonder how well thought out it was when you realize no, the money's still going the same places it always did. Football, basketball, period. And baseball will benefit with extra scholarships and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's going to be some ramifications, and if you're not a Power 4 D1 school, then this is a lot to absorb, and not everybody's going to be able to the same way. And so we're in for very interesting times as a result of all this.
Yeah, and like you said, you can kind of think you now know this a little bit better, and by the end of the day or in the next week or two, it changes completely. So the settlement has been filed, but still so many questions, and that's why Christy Dosh was on with us a little bit to try to give us some answers. Thanks for those of you who appreciated the comment in the chat room and elsewhere, too. We're now joined by Brian Howell, covers Colorado for the Boulder Daily Camera. As Colorado, the Buffs and Dion hit the field today, the first of their practices for football season. Brian, thanks for your time. Craig Smoke and David Smoke on 365 Sports. What is the difference between how that program hit today compared to a year ago?
Well, the biggest difference is that they're not all new. They've got a lot of new players, but there's a lot of core guys that are back from last year that kind of know the drill. They know what it's like being in this, the expectations. They've had, more than a year now to get to, learn what those expectations are. And so I think that they do have that core group that can kind of, bring the new guys along, as opposed to, there being basically 100 guys trying to learn each other.
Brian, I saw the note on Ethan Boyd will not be joining Colorado. Not having a real close knowledge of that roster, how important or unimportant was that? I mean, is this a big-time contributor they were expecting, or how would you kind of describe the fact that he will not be on the team this year?
Not a huge deal. I mean, he was a depth piece on the offensive line.
Okay.
A transfer from Michigan State that spent the summer with CU. He got here early summer and apparently just decided he didn't want to play football anymore. So I don't think he would have been a starter or anything like that. I think he was more, it may come into play later in the year and like, man, we wish we had him. But I think at the start of the year, it's not a big loss.
So how do you feel about the way they did address the offensive line? That was, numero uno amongst the storylines that had to do with actually on the field play. Is there a confidence that they've got it right and that they're going to be able to allow Shedeur to maximize, his tools and all the weapons at his disposal?
Yeah, you listen to them and just hand them the Joe Moore Award right now, because they obviously talk glowingly about this group, but I don't know if they're that. I don't think they're going to be like the best line in the Big 12. I almost said Pac-12, but I think they're a better group, and it'd be hard not to be. They were pretty bad last year. 8 new transfers, most of which were starters at FBS schools last year. A lot of competition and just a lot better, tenacity up front. I mean, we keep hearing about several of these guys that just kind of, bring some mean spirit to the field, which they kind of want on the offensive line. They got some guys that are, a little bit fighters and trash talkers, things like that. And so I think overall it's a better group. So
they have North Dakota State, which Dion even mentioned that, I believe, at Big 12 Media Days in Vegas. And then the next game is at Nebraska. And you would think both teams will be better when they play. Matt Rule year 2, Dion year 2. Is that kind of not a dicey start, but is that kind of a nice challenge to figure them out pretty quickly?
Yeah, and really I'd throw in week 3 there too when they go to Fort Collins.
Yeah.
And they haven't been to Fort Collins since 1996 was the last time those two teams played on CSU's campus. So, it's not the easiest start. I mean, nationally, I think people will look at it and say, no, that's not too bad of a start. But, I mean, really, there's some big challenges there. I mean, North Dakota State, in talking to, their people, they're super excited about being on national TV. And we know history that they come back these challenges. And Nebraska wants CU bad. I mean, CU's 3-0 against Nebraska since the two teams left the Big 12 years ago. Colorado's won all those matchups. And so Nebraska getting them there, that's going to be, a tough environment. And then CSU will be tough as well. So, yeah, we're going to learn a lot about them in early September.
So what happens if one of those 3 games or, Colorado State that was a game I was like 1 o'clock in the morning watching that game. It was so dramatic up in Boulder last year.
Well, and there's no love lost there.
No,
either.
They don't like each other. The coaches have gone at each other, et cetera. What happens if they have a flat tire early? Is that a cause for concern or just part of the schedule?
To me, it depends on where that happens. I mean, I think you can lose in Nebraska. Now, Buff fans wouldn't want to hear that. But if you're going to go 2-1, I think that loss has got to be Nebraska, because you can kind of, see where they can lose in Lincoln. That's a tough environment, but you really better win at home, even against a good North Dakota State team. And frankly, they're better and more talented than Colorado State. You have to win that game, even if it's in Fort Collins. So I think that if they stub their toe in Lincoln, I think that's okay, especially if it's a competitive, close game. But, if you lose any of the other 2, I think there's maybe some cause for some concern there.
So, Brian, Big 12 Media Days, which seems like forever ago at this point, it's like 3 weeks ago. But, I was wondering how the new schools would interact and just what that would be like. And, man, it felt like a group that really jived pretty well and got along and seemed to all fit together. And obviously, Colorado, this isn't their first rodeo in the Big 12, but what were your impressions and what were your thoughts on seeing them back into a quote-unquote new league and seeing the other newcomers as well and just how it all kind of fit together?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a different vibe from last year because I went out to Big 12 Media Days last year when there was all the rumors about Colorado. I just kind of wanted to feel it out. And, it was, you could definitely feel the Texas-Oklahoma presence there last year. And, this year you could tell it wasn't there. And Colorado was the team that had a lot of the buzz, especially on that day too when they took the podium. So, but I thought it was a good environment out there. I think it's a good collection of teams, and frankly, there's a lot of those coaches that know Dion Sanders a little bit because they either recruited his sons or Coach Joey McGuire, coached Dion Jr. in high school. So there's some history there with some of those guys. So that makes it kind of fun.
Ryan, is this a year that Dion, I'm not saying has to get to a bowl game, but will it be a disappointment if they don't?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I would say they do have to get one. I think that when you've got Shedeur Sanders and you got Travis Hunter, and this is their last year, I think you better get to a bowl game. I mean, frankly, you're talking about, and Dion's talking about, these are going to be the top 2 picks or the top 5 picks in the draft. If you got those guys, you're not in a bowl game. I think that's a problem. And so I think that bowl game to me is their floor. And from there, maybe you get some breaks and there's better than that. But I think bowl game is the absolute expectation for sure.
How can, in your mind, Travis Hunter be better this season?
Well, first off, if he's healthy, he has, he's played 2 years of college football and he hasn't played a full season yet. He missed a few games with Jackson State. He had a lingering injury from high school, so he missed some time with Jackson State. And then last year he missed 3.5 games. He had that injury against Colorado State, the lacerated kidney or liver, I can't remember which one it was, where he missed 3 games. So he only played 9 games last year. So I think the big thing is be available for 12 games. And then frankly, he's got to be a little bit better at corner. He struggled a little bit there last year. But beyond that, I mean, he's just phenomenal. And he's going to be really fun to watch, especially if he can play all 12 games.
All right, so you mentioned the offensive line with a little grit, little nastiness, et cetera. The defense needs that too in the trenches. I don't remember the exact number, but I know Shedeur was sacked a bunch, even in games that they won. How he's not a physical specimen, but he's a hell of an athlete, and he's tougher than nails. Is that the number one goal this year, is protecting him and making sure they do it the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're right. It was 52 times last year. He was sacked 8 times by Nebraska, even in a 36-14 win. He took 8 sacks. So, 52 times. That was a school record last year. So that is the number one priority. I mean, we've heard it since the end of last year that, Coach Prime's number one thing was, we've got to protect our quarterback. And a lot of people jump on that. We were talking about his son, and I get that. But frankly, when you've got one of the best quarterbacks in the country, whether he's your son or not, you want to try to take advantage of having that person on your team. And that's what USC tried to do with Caleb Williams. I think that's what Colorado wants to do with Shedeur Sanders, is protect your asset. And, their running backs coach talked today after practice, and, he mentioned our guys at running back, they better pass protect, because if you're letting your guys sack our most valuable player, that's a problem. And so they need to protect Shedeur Sanders. If they can do that, I very much think he could be in New York.
Brian, protecting Shedeur, the O-line being better, Shedeur being what are people not talking about from somebody who covers the team on a daily basis? What is being overlooked when it comes to the major storylines for Colorado, if anything?
Well, I think maybe the improvement on defense. I think that they've made some changes on defense that this team could be a lot better than they were last year. They were not very good, especially against the run. They gave up they got gashed a lot against the run last year. They've made a lot of strides. There's all the talk about the O-line. They've made just as many strides on the D-line, I think, and picking up some guys that are really good. Like B.J. Green was an all-conference player at Arizona State. You have Deion Hayes and Sam Okunlola, who were 2 of the top pass rushers at Pitt last year, that are both here. So they got some really good guys up front now that I think are going to help them quite a bit.
So my final thing for you, they're going to open at home. They've got Baylor. I know that was a thing we got asked on our website of, like, what's the toughest game? And my mind was like, wow, Colorado, that first month, it's, new territory, even though it's old territory, and la-di-da-di-da. My question is this: what kind of environment are people walking into at Folsom Field nowadays? For those who haven't been in a while and haven't seen the Dion effect on the home crowd, what kind of is different or the same, or how would you describe the walking into Folsom Field these days?
Well, very different than it used to be because you don't know which celebrities are going to be on the sidelines. It could be Lil Wayne rapping in the end zone. I met Dr. J on the sidelines last year.
Awesome.
CC Sabathia. They've got obviously The Rock is a friend of Coach Prime. The wrestler Goldberg, his son is on the team now, and so if The Rock and Goldberg show up at the same time, you might have the toughest sideline in America.
Yeah, no doubt.
That'll be.
I'm sorry. We lost you for a second, or I interrupted you. I'm sorry about that. You said could be the go ahead and say on the celebrities again.
Yeah, I mean, you have obviously The Rock is a friend of Coach Prime, and the wrestler Goldberg, his son is a walk-on on the team now. So if both of them show up at the same time, they might have the toughest sideline in America.
Brian, it is quite the show, isn't it? The glitz and the glamour, and so basically just all that stuff. Even the watches or whatever. And I'm not making fun of that. I am not at all. If you have it, show it. But it is more if they can come up with meat and potatoes on the bone, they might be pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what prevents people from ranking them so high is that they don't see all that meat and potatoes yet. I think they see the glitz and the glamour. I think there are people that are bothered by that. And, that's the fun part of it, or to some people, that's the annoying part of it. I think it's been kind of entertaining and fun, but I do think there's more meat on the bone than, to use your term, than people think. I think that this team is very much capable of, if they get some breaks, being in contention for the Big 12 title.
Brian, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Brian Howell covers Colorado, the Buffaloes, and the Boulder Daily Camera. Thanks for his insight and giving us a little bit more than just what you see from the peripheral. When we're at Big 12 Media Days in Vegas, you saw Shedeur, among others, who were there. Dion obviously was there. They got some swagger, but I didn't see cockiness. I didn't see any arrogance. You could kind of just see where they were. They were available, depending on who was on the air at the time. And for example, we had an intern that was there, and she was able to get a quick comment, I believe, from Shedeur for just like off to the side. Did a good job with that. So I thought it was cool to see him there.
Well, I said this pretty much going back to, I guess, this time a year ago when they were announced as to rejoining the Big 12, and this is not even necessarily always Colorado related, but I said this at the start of the show. The Big 12 needs to win football games. Like, all the other stuff is cool, the speculation, the projecting, the all the future brightness that now appears to be in front of the Big 12, whatever that may look like, just the fact that they're on sturdy ground, that's great. But if you really want this conference to be at its best, it's got to create interest. It's got to win football games. And Colorado is the best bet if they can win some football games to create some interest. And we saw how that was in the first month of the year. Last season, they were the talk of all of college football to the point of nausea. If you were somebody who didn't like Dion or didn't like Colorado, then you hated the first month of last season. But there was an electricity there that was undeniable.
Yep.
And then they just lost games, and that all went away. But if you want to be, Brett Yormark and really wave the flag and create some TV ratings and some must-see matchups and interest that's not just your typical already baked-in interest, then that's the brand that can help you do that. And so I don't say that you got to root for Colorado, but I think part of you's got to kind of hope they're pretty good and not just some afterthought after the first month of the season like they were a year ago. And I do think there's a chance that regardless of how you feel about them, that they're just pretty good, period, if some of these moves they made this offseason click in place. Now, that's everybody in America. If your moves worked out, then you're going to be pretty good. But they do have a first-round draft pick at quarterback, and not everybody just has that walking around on campus, much less another first-round dual-threat, corner/playmaker with the ball in his hands, receiver, and Travis Hunter, and so on and so forth. So they've got some great pieces at the top. Did they fill in properly around those guys? That's the big question that we all have right now. But there's a lot of confidence coming out, and not like cockiness like you said. I just think there's a real confidence there that they're going to prove people wrong or prove themselves right. And I think so long as, they're not going on some losing streak, then they're going to be one of those reasons why a lot of people have interest in Big 12 football and the conference race this year.
I think that there were schools that were a part of the Big 12. We know who the big alphas were with Oklahoma and Texas, and OU ran the conference forever and ever. Texas occasionally had a nice run in the 2000s. Then again, last year they were very good. But I do think that one of the things, listen, Auburn doesn't want Alabama to win a game. LSU doesn't want Alabama to win a game. There are teams you just hope they're not very good, but you also know reality. I think in the Big 12, you may not like a certain program, you may not like them, but I think if they're not playing your team, your favorite program, you as a conference, you as a fan of any of the programs in the Big 12 need everybody else to win.
Look at it this
and
way.
I don't always think that's been the case in this conference.
No, it hasn't, because, unlike Auburn, Alabama is like, you can't really use that as a comparison. But I just think with the SEC, the love was spread around enough where, like, LSU got theirs, Auburn got theirs, Florida got theirs, Alabama got theirs, Georgia's got everybody got theirs that's built to get theirs. Pretty much, right? Everybody did. So I know for Tennessee it's been 20-plus years, but they got theirs at the end of the 90s. Whereas in the Big 12, it's almost like there's always just two mouths to feed, and that was it. And if they were full, then everybody's fine. But if they're not, then everybody's, like on eggshells constantly. And, yeah, you're not rooting for Texas or Oklahoma to win national championships, but it damn sure would have gone a long way in the sturdiness of the conference had they done that and kind of just helped build the image of, like, no, we do still win national championships, because instead what the narrative is, this conference has not won a national title since 2000, despite having played for it like 5 times.
No, 05.
Or 05, excuse me.
05, yeah.
Despite having played for it like 5 times since then. And so that's where you look at the SEC and they can point to, Alabama didn't want Florida to win, but they sure as hell are going to wave the SEC banner, and LSU won it, and they're going to wave that banner. And I don't want the Big 12 fandom to turn into the SEC necessarily of all the chest pounding, but I do think there should be an element of pride and that you want to play the best. And so rather than rooting for Colorado to just completely suck and suck all the potential popularity out of them, I would want them to be really good, so that way when you play them, they're ranked, and they've got all this attention, and they're hosting game day, and they're bringing all this draw, and then you can go beat them and make that game magnified and that much bigger, or you lose to them in a close game. And look, if they're being held as like some crown jewel, then your loss looks even better. So, like, I think there's some mutual benefits that can occur where you don't just want them to suck, but you also aren't asking for them to hoist a national championship trophy.
No, there's certain schools you just don't like. You hope they lose all the time.
Right.
But at the same time, this conference needs a lot more wins and a lot more quality wins. Whether they have the ability to do that this year, we'll see as the schedule unfolds. There's not a lot of big-time non-conference matchups.
Them and Nebraska is one of them.
Yeah, it is. It would help. And especially if they were to win and Nebraska does win 7-8 games or some of the other non-conference games out there.
Those are things that don't seem like big deals at the time, but then inevitably when it rolls around at the end of the year and you're hearing the playoff arguments, you're like, well, they played in this week conference and they didn't beat anybody in the non-conference. So it's like, again, you don't have to root for Colorado, but if you're not going to root for them, root for Utah or K-State or I want to see the best league possible. I want everybody to be really good, and I hope everybody's better than expected to be because I want to see what that looks like. And there's a downside to that. You could all eat each other alive, but hey, let's at least make it entertaining. A bunch of great teams beating up on each other rather than just a lackluster league that doesn't really compete for anything worthy nationally.
All right. Thanks to Brian Howe in Colorado. Appreciate him covering the Buffaloes and giving us a little bit of a perspective on that. Let me see what you got, Garrett. All right.
I was just saying no live next.
Oh, okay. No live. Okay. When we come back, we got a couple of other notes with some graphics that we'll get to. Also, coming up at just after 5, Kelly Ford from K4 Ratings. He has a lot of those, like data, analytics, etc. What was cool is I happened to see him, and Garrett, you said you've seen him come across. You've followed him.
Stuff, yeah.
So I saw him put up some notes about his top whatever based on how they put it together. We'll ask him that. And then somebody ran an algorithm or what's the word I'm looking for? They ran 60 or 40 something different times based on his ratings and how many teams won or played for a national title or were a part of the college football playoff. Pretty interesting that we have that. He'll join us today a little after 5. Mark Daniels, voice of UCF. They began their workouts and practices today at around 5:30. He'll join us. This is 365 Sports.
Let the deals continue at Allen Samuels in Waco during the Make This the Summer event with hot deals. The 2024 Dodge Hornet RT, $4,000 down, puts you in a 2-year low-mileage lease for $245 a month, or a 2024 Fiat 500e fully battery-operated vehicle, $4,000 down, puts you in a 2-year lease for $245 a month. If it's luxury you want, Allen Samuels has that as well. Come and drive the sleeky, spacious Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. We drove one of those during our Big 12 media coverage in Las Vegas. It's amazing. Over 20 vehicles in stock available for immediate delivery. Don't want a full-sized SUV? Well, come get the best-selling SUV in the history of automobiles with the Grand Cherokees. Over 40 in stock. You're bound to find one for you. Get your low monthly payment vehicles, large, luxurious, and mid-sized SUVs. Don't forget about Ram trucks. They have half-tons and all-tons, some with 2.9% financing for 72 months. They also have a great selection of the famous heavy-duty 2500 and 3500 models. Also qualified for no payments for 90 days. Come see what they have. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas. Also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or 2 or 3 reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
It helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up, but should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Well, A lot of stats, et cetera, data, analytics with Kelly Ford coming up a little after 5 o'clock. So ESPN, this actually came from College Sports Only, but ESPN put out their top 25 college football players of the 2000s. Now, this got a lot of feedback. The number one player in Ndamukong Suh. Garrett's going to put that up here in just a second. Now, I can see the argument against that, the credentials or whatever. The name I did not see on here, one of them, I didn't see Johnny Manziel. Reggie Bush was 7. Garrett, you got it?
Working on it. Hang on.
Okay. Vince Young was 4. But these lists are great for debates. And also, Craig, you've said this before, the summertime type of conference. Okay, here we are. ESPN's new rankings, top 25 college football players of the 2000s. Now, there's going to be some that are not as 25. Man, there's like probably, I don't know how many are great players, but that's a pretty good list. But when you have 19 people ahead of Lamar Jackson, that's the kind of list it is, whether he should be 20 or not. Justin Blackmon won 2 Biletnikoff Awards, flamed out in the NFL, couldn't get himself straight. But there we are, Ndamukong Suh, and then Baker Mayfield at number 2, who put up staggering numbers and also, of course, was incredibly successful, but did not win or play or did not win at all.
Yeah, my first thought is you could just have linked the article rather than typed out every single part of the top 25 if you're the College Sports Only.
It's a tweet, though.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, you could have just linked it rather than having to type all those names and schools out. That's a lot of stuff on there. But, yeah, that's these types of lists are always interesting to look at. I think Ndamukong Suh is a guy who should have won a Heisman Trophy award years ago, and a lot of people feel that way, and was the most dominant player in college football, the biggest menace in college football at that time, and just fell to, I think, mostly just the stigma of the award being all about quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers and nobody else. And I know that hasn't been the case every single year, but that's basically been the case for the majority of the award's existence. And so he got snubbed, and I appreciate that ESPN in creating this list had him at the top. Even though he didn't win a national title, he didn't win the Heisman, he was as good as you could create in college football or hope to create in college football at that time. So, yeah, I think Ndamukong Suh is starting there at number 1. I think that's a surprise pick, but actually one of the most logical and actually like real, genuine picks that you could have made instead of just getting wowed by the Heisman Trophy next to somebody's name.
All right, there's Baker Mayfield.
I don't get that.
Roy Williams and Kyler Murray of Oklahoma. Where's Adrian Peterson?
I don't know. I mean, he was really good, but he wasn't great his entire career, like great top level. His best year was his freshman year, and he was really good the couple years that followed. But I don't know. There's been a lot of other really great backs. I mean, is Derrick Henry on here?
Nope.
There's been a ton of running backs. So
RG3, Colt McCoy. There's going to be some hits and misses. Yeah.
Go 25. I mean, and you're doing this since 2000. So that's one player for every season. So you're going to have some people that are getting left off of this bad boy. Baker Mayfield, I feel like there was a conversation. Wasn't there like some article that came out like a year ago?
I think it was Bill Conley's.
Yeah.
He was like the number 1 player. Yeah.
And he explained his reason as to why. Baker Mayfield was great. He was really, really good. I'm sorry you didn't win a national title, and that knocks you down a peg. Now, I get it. He played longer. Cam Newton was more of a flash in the pan, but I'd rather have Cam Newton's career than as a fan, I'd rather have Cam Newton came in and do what he did, even if it was just in a blink of an eye versus what Baker did over the course of his career. I mean, that's just me,
though. Well,
on
on that list, Sue didn't play. They lost in the Big 12 championship game. That was a very just above average team, and maybe the last one Nebraska had, but
and I can
Newton won it, Young won it,
yeah.
Tebow won, Reggie won, all these guys. Joe Burrow had maybe the best single season ever, but go on. But you're right, as far as winning the national title is a separation there, depending on what position you play, especially.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they didn't factor it in, and that's why I partly appreciate the Ndamukong Suh pick. But at the same time, as good as Baker was, I just feel like compared to the other quarterbacks, that's something pretty glaring that's missing there. And, yeah, he's got a Heisman and Vince doesn't, but give me Vince Young's career and what that left versus Baker Mayfield's 10 times out of 10. So yeah, I would differ there. I think Baker had an incredible career. I would not trade his, though, for Cam Newton's or for Vince Young's or for Tim Tebow, for that matter. Like, are you kidding? How is Tim Tebow?
He's 6.
6.
Yeah.
And behind Baker, and look, I'm an Oklahoma fan, and I'm sitting here going, it doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I have a beef with him at number 2. But that's not to take away from him and what all he accomplished. It's just that I put more weight in other areas, and so my list would be a little bit different.
At 8 is Bryant McKinney, a monster of a player at Miami, played a heck of a nice career in the NFL. But then it's almost like what they do with the group of 5s in the top 25 rankings. Oh, damn, we need to put 2 or 3 of them in there from 22 to 25. Then all of a sudden, Terrell Suggs, Joe Thomas, Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald, none of them won a national title, but we need to put them somewhere, so let's just put them in a clump there at 11 through 14. And then Pollock at Georgia at 15, too.
Yeah, this is the top players, though. I know I'm talking about natties, but I'm sitting here comparing a player to a player and their accomplishments. And for me, a quarterback, did you help lead your team to a national title is a big deal. With some of these other guys, I think it's good. Aaron Donald deserves to be mentioned.
Oh, no. Let me before. I think they all deserve to be mentioned, but it's like in a clump. They go, well, we got to put some of these guys together, or we got to put them and include them, like you see at the group of 5 in the last 5 of every top 25. That's what it was.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way. Terrell Suggs, seeing him there at number 11, that's great for Arizona State. To have that kind of love and not a name that you see all that often in the conversation about GOATs or the best ever, at least in a lot of the lists that I see. So that's just kind of a different name on this list, and certainly somebody that the Sun Devils can be quite proud about. I think a lot of these are self-explanatory. I don't need to explain why Joe Burrow was great or Larry Fitzgerald for that matter, even though for me, Larry Fitzgerald will always be the guy I saw tear up A&M in College Station like no other, and that was one of the best individual performances I've seen in person in college football. And I remember that vividly to this day. He was tremendous. And, yeah, Justin Blackmon was awesome. So unfortunate what happened to his pro career because he just couldn't, get his life together basically. But he was incredible. And, yeah, just a lot of memories come off of seeing a list like this of just how many great players I've enjoyed watching over the last 20 years, 25 years.
Everybody that's watching, me, Craig, Garrett, Jack, if we put together a top 25, I guarantee you, first of all, it would be hard. And second of all, we would miss out. We would like just 3 or 4 just completely whiff on somebody that could eat. And there's an argument. But one of the things that we've always had a rule, that at least I have for many, many years, if you have a top 3, you can't sit there. You can. Do whatever you want, but you can't sit there and go, what about boom, 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 boom? Our rules are if you put somebody on, you need to take somebody off. Now, with 25, that's going to be hard to do. But if we have a top 3 and then we get 9 names, well, it's a top 3. It's not a top 9. And then, okay, where do you put somebody, put them in the top 3, who comes off? Because then it makes it just a little bit more of a cross-check. Otherwise, we just have a bunch of random, or not random, but a bunch of names and not a specific number of the list that we have. When we come back, we're not done. Much more to get to. The 5 o'clock hour is around the corner. We will hear from Mark Daniels, who's the voice at UCF, but Kelly Ford, K Ford ratings, coming up next. K Ford rankings coming up next. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for all of your automotive needs, no matter what you're looking to do. If you're looking to get into a brand new vehicle, hit the highways and byways this summer, they can help get you into a brand new vehicle, a car, truck, or SUV. If you're looking to get into a pre-owned vehicle, they can help you do that as well over at Richard Carr. A lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks always available over on the lot. And if you're looking to just get your car worked on, well, they can help out with that as well over at Richard Carr with their award-winning customer service. And right now they're celebrating American quality here during the summertime and American value during their red, white, and blue sale at Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac. And how about professional-grade power mixed with first-class luxury, interior, and a multi-pro tailgate? Well, that's what you'll find with the GMC Sierra, the best truck on the road right now, and Richard Carr is loaded with trucks. Right now, you can save $9,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT trucks in stock with a 2010 or newer trade-in. So if you've got a 2010 or newer vehicle and you've been looking to upgrade, then take advantage of their trade-in deal right now and save nearly $10,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT trucks. You can find a variety of Sierra trucks under $40,000 on the lot right now and find all of their savings during the red, white, and blue tag sale on the cars on the lot when you go and visit them in person. So right now, check out those Sierras as far as the newer models go, and they will hook you up with some great deals. Also, they've got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks available as well. You can check those out. The highly inspected used cars and trucks, all special price during the red, white, and blue tag sale. And with a dozen lenders to choose from, they get credit approved when others can't, as 100% credit approval is always the goal. For 25 years in Central Texas, Richard Carr has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now. And all their great deals off Highway 6, the Imperial exit.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America. 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Kelly Ford from K Ford Rankings. Big Ten fan, is got a degree from Ohio University. Also, associate commissioner at the Horizon League. And I saw a lot of what he's done. I'm very much, is it rankings or ratings? Ratings, okay. I've seen a lot of graphics and data, and I love that kind of stuff. And so yesterday evening I'm watching, it popped up, here, Garrett, put this up first. This is the top 30 based on his ratings. That includes Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. At the top, all the way down, you see at number 30, you see TCU, SMU just above them, KU, et cetera. A lot of Big 12 teams involved there. And then I saw someone that took what he has, his ratings, and they simulated the season 15 times. Here it is here. 41 teams made the college football playoff. 6 teams won a national title. 10 made the national championship game. 20 teams made the semifinals, and on and on and on. We'll go to the other part of that graphic later. We're joined by Kelly Ford from K Ford Ratings here with us on 365 Sports. Kelly, you just basically got involved with this. Is this something that's in your background? I know you're involved, as you said, as a fan, but when did you get into like the ratings part, the analytical, the data part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on. It's going to be a lot of fun here talking college football, as it always is. So I've always been a huge college football fan. For as long as I can remember, it's been my favorite sport. And then I've also, again, for as long as I can remember, had a knack for numbers and math, science, statistics. That's always kind of been a strong suit of mine. And so for a long time, I really enjoyed the content put out by Bill Connolly, who's famous for SC+, Brian Fremeau, FEI, and, you know, other predictive models out there like ESPN's SPI, right? That gets a lot of publicity. Mm-hmm. So I've always found it fascinating. And, you know, in 2019, or it was really before 2019, but in 2019, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to publish my own, put them out there for people to consume. And that's what it started as. It was just fun, a different way to view college football at a 30,000-foot view. And it's been a lot of fun over the last 4 or 5 years getting into it and kind of growing a following, if you will, on social media. And everything that I do is stemming from my power ratings. And you talked about the teams at the top there, the top 30. Every single piece of content I do uses the power ratings as an engine. And by using that, we're able to do all sorts of things, project how a season's going to go, how a game's going to go, a conference race, or the national championship race. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to just kind of seeing where it goes.
So, Kelly, based on, I believe I'm looking at the right slide, you are pretty high on the Oregon Ducks. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I've got Oregon number 3 right now in my preseason version 2 power ratings. I think this might be the best Oregon team we've seen in quite some time.
So tell us how you put all this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the preseason, I've got 3 main inputs. You're looking at returning production, and that's first and foremost kind of the most important thing. That's most heavily weighted in the model. What are you bringing back from last year? What are you adding via the transfer portal? What are you losing via the transfer portal and to graduation, the pro draft, all those things? And then what has your program power rating been in recent years? You know, how strong was Baylor a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? How well have teams recruited out of the high school ranks in the last couple of years? And again, you're weighting the most recent years most heavily. But guys, I've had to reevaluate and kind of rerun some back testing and figure out what's the right weighting, what's the right mix of these components, because how you build a roster in 2024 college football is much different than how you built a roster back in 2019 when I started doing this publicly. So spent a lot of time earlier this summer figuring out what's the appropriate weights there. And then once we get into the season, we start phasing out the preseason component, and it gets replaced with the in-season data, which, of course, is much more informative. But that's really what it boils down to. Every single team is judged on the same factors, the same components, and then we're able to break it down not just at the team level, but, you know, the offensive units, the defensive units, and to a lesser degree, special teams, which become, you know, more informative as the year goes on.
You have Oklahoma at 8. And I would think that most people are probably a little bit leery about how they're going to hit the SEC in their first year with how last year they had a good football team, but a little bit like not so sure about them, unlike what a lot of people feel like about Texas, if they're being honest. Why Oklahoma at 8?
So I'll be right there with a lot of those people you just talked about. I'm a little leery of having them at number 8. Oklahoma is a team that if I'm looking at my top 10, they're the one that sticks out, and I say, man, I'm not sure if Kelly Ford, the person, necessarily that Oklahoma should be there. But K Ford ratings the model, again, based on the inputs and the factors that we were talking about that all teams are judged on. This is a top 15 offense. It's a top 15 defense. They were number 10 last year, so a good team. They are transitioning, of course, into the SEC, which is going to be tough. They have the 6th most difficult schedule in the entire country by my number. Even though this is the number 8 power-rated team in my preseason version 2 model, I'm still only projecting an 8-4 record for Oklahoma because that schedule is so tough. So, again, the power rating, I always talk about this as it's one data point that you can use to evaluate a team. It gives a good 30,000-foot view of the landscape of college football, and then you can drill down into the team. But no model, including my own, is perfect. Every model has blind spots. There are things that, intangible things in and around a program, whether it's about a coach, whether it's about, the infrastructure of a program, whatever it is, that a model can't capture. We can't quantify with math. And so no model's perfect. Everybody's got blind spots. Everybody's got outliers. I am wondering if Oklahoma might be an outlier for me in what I call the positive direction, meaning Oklahoma is more highly power rated than they might end up being come the end of the year. But that's what the model says, and I've learned to trust the model at least at a 30,000-foot view. We can bicker about, a spot here or there, but over time it's proven to be pretty reliable, and that's where I've got Oklahoma. But Kelly Ford, the person, is certainly sharing in some of those reservations. I'm very curious to see how year one in the SEC goes for the Oklahoma Sooners.
You have Notre Dame at 7. They seem like they're flying under the radar. Coach Marcus Freeman coming back yet another year as he tries to put this program in a nice spot. Were they higher than you thought? And but let me ask you, when it comes to these ratings, this is emotionless based, right? This is based on whatever the numbers spit out.
Correct. Yeah. So I do everything I can to remove all human biases from this, and the goal here is to make it 100% objective. And so that's what we're constantly trying to do. I'm constantly working on what I call refining the edges, smoothing out the edges of the model, trying to tamp down the effective outliers, all of those kind of terms that nobody wants to talk about. That's what's going on behind the scenes. You asked about Notre Dame, and they're number 7 in my power rating. That really, it's not surprising to me, like Oklahoma at number 8 for me, because if you look at Notre Dame, on offense, defense, and I know they're bringing in, a new quarterback with Riley Leonard there from Duke, but it's top 10 on both sides of the ball. They've been a top 10 team in my power rating 3 of the last 4 years. So this is a program that has, in recent years, really performed at a high level. There's nothing wrong with their recruiting, of course, at Notre Dame, nor will there ever probably be. And then you look at the schedule, and that's what stands out to me this year about Notre Dame, because in most years, Notre Dame plays a pretty difficult schedule, and they're a polarizing team. A lot of people either love Notre Dame or hate them. Very few people are kind of neutral. And so depending on what your viewpoint is in Notre Dame, you either you lean into that or you really try to kind of reject that notion. But the reality is, from a numbers standpoint, Notre Dame's schedule in most years is pretty difficult. This year, it is not. It's number 58 out of 68, Power 4 teams. So it's the 11th easiest Power 4 schedule this year. There is only one game on the entire schedule in which the Irish right now are assigned less than a 65% win expectancy by my numbers. That is week 1, right out of the gate, on the road at Texas A&M. Of course, you've got Riley Leonard at a new school going up against his former coach at Duke, at a new school there, Mike Elko, the head coach at Texas A&M now. So that's the only game, though. If Notre Dame gets by that one, my numbers are going to favor them, at least for now, in every single game the rest of the way. I've got a 43% chance that Notre Dame wins at least 11 games, and that is the number that the math suggests Notre Dame needs to get to be in that at-large conversation. Of course, the Irish can't earn an AQ. They have to be an at-large, one of those 7. The reality is, I believe that even with this schedule, if Notre Dame finishes 10-2, the committee will put them in. It's the Notre Dame brand. They reach that 10-win mark. Neither of those things should matter, in my opinion, because everything needs to be contextualized. However, the reality is I believe the committee will put them in, and I've got a 76% chance right now that Notre Dame gets to at least 10 wins. That week 1 game is huge for both the Irish and the Aggies, and I'm really excited for it.
It's a great. You haven't seen them play very often. That's what we might start seeing more and more of because of the condensed or larger, I guess not condensed, larger conferences. That's what we're hoping to see in the conference play.
As far as the Big 12 specifically goes, you got to go all the way to 18 in Utah to see the first Big 12 school, and that's part of the price of losing Texas and Oklahoma, I understand. But there's a gaggle of teams all right there. I mean, K-State at 19 right behind Utah, Oak State at 24, Arizona 25, KU 26, TCU 30. Kelly, just what do you think separates Utah and kind of Kansas State a little bit more from the rest? And what do your numbers tell you about just the conference itself heading into this season?
Yeah, so the Big 12 Conference, and I've talked about this before too, it might be, and I think it is going to be, my favorite Power 4 race this year. And that's because there are so many contenders in this conference. Objectively speaking, what the Big 12 lacks in terms of elite power-rated teams, because you touched on it, the top 2 power-rated are Utah at number 18 and Kansas State at number 19. So there is nobody in the top 17 from the Big 12. So what they lack in elite power-rated teams, the Big 12 more than makes up for in really, really good power-rated teams, which, as you noted, there are a handful in the top 30, and there's a lot more there just outside the top 30 as well. Guys, I've got 10 teams in this conference that if you wanted to make a case to me that they have a path to Arlington, I would listen, and I'd probably agree with you. I think the conference is that deep. Now, for each of those 10 teams, after you're done talking, saying, here's why, UCF can make it to Arlington, I'll turn right around and say, and here's why UCF won't make it to Arlington. I think that there is such a compelling case to be made for upwards of 10 teams in this conference. You talked about Kansas State and Utah. Those are the two right now that are standing out as the favorites. I've got Kansas State and Utah with 6.5 and 6.4 projected conference wins, respectively. Number 3 on that list, and it's actually really a three-way tie down to the 10th of a win. Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma State, all at 5.6. But again, there's another, 5 teams that are within a game of that. But Kansas State and Utah have, the balance on both sides of the ball. If I look at Kansas State, they're number 19 on offense, they're number 26 on defense. You look at Utah, the defense as it has been under Kyle Whittingham for a long time, projecting to be top 10. I mean, this might be the best defense that Utah's had in the CFP era. That's how good I think they can be. The offense is number 36, but of course we're expecting a bounce back this year with Cam Rising coming back. It really lagged last year without him, at least from their standards. So really, just those two teams, what they're bringing back, the efficiencies on each side of the ball. And then also when you look at the schedules that they face, they are the two easiest conference schedules. So when you strip away the non-conference, or just conference games, these are the two teams that have the easiest conference schedule in the Big 12. Now, part of that's inherent because they are the top power-rated teams and you're not going to play yourself. So part of that's to be expected. But I do think it's worth noting that from a schedule difficulty standpoint, these two seem to have gotten the best draw, at least based on my version 2 power ratings here this preseason. Of course, all of that will change on a weekly basis as we get going.
All right, so I said last night I was watching your feed. I've been keeping up with it. And then at Bucks in 62, then simulated, based on your numbers, the season 15 times. Here is the list. Garrett, do you actually have the list? I know it's kind of a wide list, a long list that we put up on a graphic before we ask Kelly a follow-up. Okay, it's very small, so I'll give you the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, this is the one when I asked about Oregon initially, This is what I had seen. Yeah.
There you go. Oregon in the 60 how many was it that he did? How many simulations did he do? 15 times. Oregon, out of the 15 simulations, won the national title 4 times. So did Georgia, Ohio State 3 times, Notre Dame twice, and then Penn State and Texas. Each of them got 1. And it seems like, first of all, Oregon should be very, very good. They were really good last year, and now they have Dylan Gabriel to help make up for the loss of Bo Nix, and who knows, might be better. We'll see. And, man, it still seems to me that you hear about Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and yet here you are with this being simulated 15 times, and there are the Ducks and Dan Lanning.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me dive into Oregon, a little bit more here, because that was the first team we asked about, and I didn't fully know the format of how this was going, so I didn't give you a whole lot on Oregon. So my apologies.
That's okay.
The Ducks, coming into this year, I've got them power rated number 3, which is where they were to end last year as well, and it's the highest power rating this team has had since 2014, when I actually had the Ducks finish number 1 in my year-end power ratings. Of course, they did not win the national championship, but they did end the year from a power rating standpoint number 1. The offense last year was number 2. You talked about Dylan Gabriel coming in and some other flashy pieces too. I'm projecting this to be the best offense in the country. The defense also improved, if you can believe it, because last year they were number 15. Now I'm projecting number 14. There is not a single game on Oregon's schedule this year in which my numbers assign less than a 59% win expectancy. That 59%, of course, week 7 at home when Ohio State, who I do have number 2 in the power rating, so a better power-rated team. But because the game is in Eugene, my numbers are favoring Oregon in that game, at least for now. So Oregon's favored in every single game, 22% chance to go 12-0, 61% chance to win at least 11 games, and then 10, that's the number I think is the magic number for them to be an at-large consideration based on the schedule they're playing. 88% chance to reach the playoff via the at-large path at a minimum. That is up there with Georgia and Ohio State as the top 3 with regard to their chances to be in that CFP conversation. So it's no surprise that when this was simulated by Bucks in 62, and he did this last year as well, and it was a fun exercise, so he said, can I do it again? I said, absolutely, just shoot me the results and I'll post them here. And so it's no surprise that Oregon pops up all over this. I think this is going to be a really good team. If we strip away the results of the 15 sims and just look at what if the season played out as my numbers are projecting to the letter, to the T, which of course they will not. Teams are going to overperform. Teams are going to underperform. But what if it played out exactly as my number suggested? I would have Oregon actually being the number 5 seed in the playoffs because they would be 12-2 with a loss in the Big Ten championship game to Ohio State. If they were able to beat Ohio State in what I expect to be a rematch in Indianapolis, then of course they would be number 2 behind just Georgia for me in the playoff. But I have Oregon number 5, kind of my top 12 teams that get into my simulated playoff, if you will, if we ran the season 10,000 times and we took the aggregate or expected result. Georgia, SEC champs would be number 1. Ohio State, Big Ten champs would be number 2. Florida State, ACC champs would be number 3, of course, because we're using the CFP seeding principles as well. And Utah, out of the Big 12, would be my number 4 team and get those buys. The teams in that fill in after that: Oregon at number 5, Texas at number 6, Alabama 7, Penn State 8, LSU 9, Michigan 10, Ole Miss 11, and Boise State would get the G5 spot at number 12 for me. So that's what that looks like for me. That's on the website as well, k4ratings.com. But certainly happy to talk more in depth about the 15 cents too, if you guys have more there.
No, yeah, and Kelly, we got to move on for another guest that we have coming up, the voice of UCF athletics. But the G5's the highest ranked you had. Memphis, Tulane, and then you mentioned Boise State are the ones competing for that particular spot, and of course that can change. I want to get the next time we get you on, most deserving, what if, all of that. We'll get into that with you, but thanks for your time. Keep up the great work. Stay in touch.
Absolutely, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.
It's Ford, ratings.com. You can go to the website. I have it now pinned at the top of numerous different sites that I have. Again, the data, how he feeds it, and then the possibility of, like you said, this is not going to go according to plan. It never does. Although some of these schools look like they'll probably be a part of that mix at the end of the year.
Yeah, he does a good job, and there's all sorts of different places you can go and look for, formulas and numbers and things like that. But Ford Ratings is one of the better ones, and I don't know, it almost feels like there's like a whole cottage, kind of like YouTube college football. Like there's the whole cottage industry stemming from like Bill Connolly back in the day.
Yep.
That's turned into like just dozens of people who have their own formulas and their own charts and their own, whatever else. And it's been really interesting to see that expand over the years to what it is now, where there's so many different places to, try and see something that helps you determine, who you're betting on or just who you think's going to win or how you think the league's going to shake out. And so, good to talk to him and get some insight on kind of how that all works on his end and get a better idea for what you're looking at each week when the new ratings come out. But certainly not a surprise to see some of the usual suspects at the top of the list, but definitely some things that are a little bit different from various others that make you go, that's interesting, and makes you think maybe a little bit differently as well. But, yeah, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, we expect them to be great, but it's college football, like he said, and it's not going to be exactly how it is on paper.
And I think I brought this up. He's the associate commissioner of the Horizon League. That's his real job, and based out of Indianapolis. We're joined by Mark Daniels, voice of UCF Knights and, of course, athletics. He joins us on 365 Sports. Mark, get off vacation. It's time to go.
Brother, I'm ready to go. First day of camp. It's nice and hot. I'm grilling right now back at my house because it's still grilling season, but we got a football game in 4 weeks. Let's play.
All right, what are you grilling?
We got some chicken kale sausage, some boneless pork chops, and chicken breast.
Very good. Very nice. Very healthy. Very good. Mark Daniels, again, we've had Mark on and got to know him back when all things changed in the summer and the fall of 2021. So it's the first day of camp. Expectations, if you were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, if I said 7, would that be a pretty good number?
For UCF fans, no.
Okay, a scale of 1 to 10, 12.
Well, I mean, it's late July, early August. Everybody has high expectations. It's interesting, guys. Every team is still trying to figure out what the new Big 12 is going to be. I do think even though, a school like Utah maybe has earned that preseason ranking, a Kansas State with the players they're bringing back, Kansas, I do think that there's a bunch, and obviously Arizona, there's a bunch of other teams that I think feel like, look, we're close. And a few, games that go our way, and as we've talked before, I think UCF had that feeling last year as they're going through the Big 12, learning what the conference is about, then now they're better prepared for it. I don't know what the number is, guys. I'm always interested in the journey. Important games early lay the foundation for how you may play the rest of the year. I think a UCF fan outside of opening the season looks at, a first conference home game as Colorado and Dion in prime time. They've got a non-conference game in Gainesville. It's going to be a massive game in this state. Utah comes here on Black Friday. So I think there's that level of excitement. But I think they feel as if Gus Malzahn's been aggressive in building a roster that Gus says he thinks can contend in the Big 12. So fans obviously have that type of expectation.
KJ Jefferson, I mean, he was one of those big gets, and obviously Gus has had a lot of success with quarterbacks, but this matchup in particular just seems to fit so well, Mark, of each side likes what the other has to offer. Why do you think this will be a good one out on the field for the Knights, and just how has KJ already kind of acclimated himself to Orlando and the community?
First thing, I think he's developed has leadership skills that has, gone into effect. When he got here in January, you meet your teammates, you go do some off-season workouts. Just spring, I think, saw a commitment from him, like, guys, let's go. And people said, okay, this guy means business. And now coming into this camp in here late July, early August, there's an understanding. He was voted one of the 14 captains for UCF. He fits the mold and style of play. It's unfair to compare anybody to Cam Newton, but the way Gus used Cam, I think you see some similarities here. I'm not quite sure they're going to run KJ as much as Cam because of the depth in backfield for UCF. But he's a big dude. He can throw the football. He's got a bunch of starts under his belt. He's not going to be overwhelmed by any environment. And I think his teammates see how that experience comes into play. So it's easy to follow him. And I think he's confident in his ability. I think he sees how UCF has built an offense around him. And, Gus knew KJ, obviously, Gus being from Arkansas, knows everybody in that state. So there was a natural connection there. And I think Gus sold him on, hey, this is what we ran with Cam. This is what we want to run with you. And I think it was very appealing for KJ, who maybe just needed a fresh start.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of fun about the transfer portal is even if you were okay, and maybe even okay good, there's always some breath of fresh air. And with Malzahn's history, with all due respect to Arkansas, Sam Pittman, whatever, it just seemed like it's a match that kind of gives him a toy.
Yeah, it is. And guys, look, if you go back and take a look at Gus's offenses at Auburn when they were really rolling, it was the athletic quarterback, but it also was a 1-2 punch when it came to running backs. Obviously, his time at Arkansas when McFadden and Jones were there. And I'm saying, it may be an unfair comparison, but between KJ, his size, and ability to run, the return of R.J. Harvey and what we saw with him last year becoming one of the better backs and maybe what I think was the best running back conference in the country. And again, this year, adding Penny Boone, who had great success at the MAC, a brief stop at Louisville, a 1,400-yard rusher, there's a sense of we can ground and pound you. And that may not be the modern-day college football. It's not the UCF won't spread you out a little bit. But I think Gus knows you've got to be able to run the football. We saw that in the games that UCF felt like they were a possession or two away, the way teams dominated the line and ran the ball. And I think Gus's philosophy is, if I get a lead on you in the fourth quarter, you got to stop this. And I think that's kind of more what Gus was like when he competed for SEC titles at Auburn.
You cover the team as closely as anybody. What is your biggest question mark entering camp?
Well, look, one, did UCF get better at the areas that they needed to get better from a standpoint of Big 12? That was the quality of lines. We talked about that before. They brought in some bodies in the offensive line. Until they go play games, you won't really know how good that line is. That's one area there. Two, linebacker, they were really shorthanded last year. They went out and aggressively pursued some linebackers. Ethan Barr, another guy that came in. He's a Vanderbilt transfer, voted team captain. He's going to help them a lot at the middle linebacker spot. So are they better on the offensive line? Do they now have linebackers that can, one, get pressure on quarterbacks, can help cover, can, not get beat on the outside? I think their secondary significantly better. It wasn't bad last year, but I think they're bigger and stronger there. So offensive line, I think, is going to be better. The back side of the defense, I think, needs to be better, and I think they feel like they're better. But, again, you've got to go play. But I think Gus clearly believes he's got the best team since he's been here, which has been, trying to compete in the American, then building a roster to the Big 12, experiencing a year in the Big 12. And now I think he feels like, as he looks around the league, okay, I think I've got some pieces that give us a chance to contend. It's a very challenging schedule, an exciting schedule for UCF fans, but that's why we look forward to playing all of them.
I'm glad you brought up that latter part, because I was going to ask you, and I paused because it's 4 years in, but the way you just described it there, does it finally feel like it's kind of all of Gus's team for maybe the first time, the way that he's had time to sort of design it all?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I think, remember when Gus got here, UCF did not know they were going to the Big 12. There was a hope, but he didn't know what's going to happen. So I think he felt like, okay, what am I inheriting? Let me build a roster. And then when the Big 12 news comes, you've got to try to compete where you are at the same time pivot to get into the recruiting games. And look, I think Gus has been outstanding in recruiting, and his class is on pace right now to be a top 20, 25 class, which for UCF had been unheard of. And that's competing against everybody else in the country. One of the better portal classes in the country. So I think now he's really starting to build what he wants. He's learned a little bit about what he needs to do in the Big 12. I think he feels comfortable what he's brought in for the offense that he wants to run. And I think now, yes, his fingerprints are all over the place. There are very few players that are not Gus players on this roster. And I think he feels like, hey, this is the best position we've been in. And because of the league being wide open, I think he feels like there's no reason why we can't. Look, UCF knows there's a bunch of challenging games in the schedule. I think they feel like there's no game they can't win. Well, I think last year they felt like, hey, we hope to contend in these games. Let's see what happens. I think there's a sense of there's no game we can't compete. Doesn't mean we're going to win them, but I think we're in a better position to compete because we have a better idea what this league is about.
What does Ted Roof bring to the table?
Experience, one, because he's coached so long in college football, but he and Gus have worked together before. I think there's a comfort level there. And look, the guy that was the DC last year is still on the coaching staff, but Gus thinks very highly of. There was a sense of, look, maybe we've just got to add a veteran mind here that can see things. We've got to get bigger, stronger, faster. Maybe philosophy, we've got to figure out what exactly we want to do. And look, I think last year UCF competed well. They just didn't have the horses to kind of compete against some of the Big 12 offenses that we played last year. I think they're bigger, stronger. I think they feel like they got better tacklers right now. Then you throw in what I think, and every offense wants to be more aggressive, but I do think UCF feels like they're going to take a few more risks that I think you may see them blitz a little bit more, where they were a little bit hesitant to do that before because you weren't sure about, going man on man. I think they feel better now about how they disguise their defenses and attack people. I think UCF likes their defensive front, which has some really experienced guys. And from that standpoint, I think Ted's going to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think the familiarity with Gus, I think, goes a long way as well. Gus is now choosing to get back involved a lot more with offensive play calling. I think he feels like, look, Ted can handle the defense. Let me get involved offensively. And I think he feels really good about where he's at coaching-wise with his staff.
When you think about I think the offensive line last year was piecemealed and struggled at times. There's going to always be something that doesn't go well, and they're trying to do better on the run defense, and Roof is there for that. Of everything they needed, which was fixed by more, the transfer portal or what they brought in among high school students the last couple of years, high school recruiting?
Well, I'm not going to dodge your question, but I do think it was both. I think the portal, the last 2 years, I think Gus and his staff did a great job in saying, okay, who can we add that's going to help us in the areas that we need and go get them and be successful in doing that. At the same time, I think Gus felt like we still have to be aggressive from a high school standpoint. And if you just look at where the classes are going to be ranked this year, where the class was ranked last year, I think they've really done an amazing job. I mean, again, right now, and you got a long way to go until kids sign. Most people have UCF as a top 20 class, and that's unheard of at UCF. And I think Gus now has figured out how to recruit in-state kids to win some battles against the, quote, big schools in the state. He's convinced some kids that years ago would have left to go play, and I mean no disrespect, to go to an NC State or to go to Pitt or to go to Iowa State, to say, no, you can come here. And he's winning most of those battles now. So it's a mix of both. And you've got to be portal active, and yet at the same time, I think you've got to feel aggressive that you can win some state battles. So I think they've gone after the spots. I know we need help. Again, linebacker last year was glaring. Went out, got a couple guys, 3 guys that helped from the portal, and yet still took some guys from the high school area. I think next year's class, he's got some playmakers, wide receivers that really stand out. So Gus is going to build it both ways. Whatever that number is, if it's 60-40 portal to high school, he's done a great job. And I really think if you take a look at the transfer portal rankings and high school recruiting rankings, UCF is probably further along than people thought they'd be. And I think Gus, who's got such a great reputation in the state to begin with, has done a great job. And they've done a great job selling it. And guys, it's changed today. Now you're not trying to sell the kid on Taj Mahal. It is NIL or revenue share, whatever it is. But it's also, hey, come here and compete for conference championships, and can we make the playoffs? He's flipped some kids from programs that people don't think he can flip. So it's a good time, but now we got to go play and win games. If we don't win games, nobody's happy.
Yeah, been very cool seeing some of the splashes they've made in recruiting. But you mentioned in-state there. I don't want to fast forward too much, but I do have to ask because we're going to get so caught up in the week-to-week here pretty soon. But how big of a deal is that to see Florida and that trip to Gainesville on the schedule, having not played that many times, but the last time, as we know, the big bowl victory over Florida. How big of a deal was that a couple years back, Mark, and how big of a deal and opportunity is it to have Florida on the schedule again this year?
Well, I've called every UCF Florida game. The first couple were just, come get a check and take the loss and go home. The bowl game was a great day for UCF. For Florida, it's a transition, a coaching change. A lot of guys missing the game. It doesn't take anything away from what it meant to UCF. The first time that they're going to play a regular season football game that has value to both teams, where I do think the other side has no choice but to look at UCF differently than they have in the past. Florida's program is where it's at right now, trying to figure out who they are and what they can be. There's great momentum for UCF. There's a fascinating storyline that could develop, for that. Hey, maybe Florida beats Miami. Maybe Florida beats Texas A&M. Maybe they're 4-0 when you get to that game. Maybe UCF is 4-0 when you get to that game. Maybe Florida stubs their toe a couple of times. And makes even more pressure on Billy Napier. I will say this, and this is my 30th year of UCF football. There's no regular season game that's been a more sought-after ticket on the road for UCF fans than this. They give you 5,000 tickets. If UCF fans had their choice, they'd put 30,000 up there. If Florida loses a couple of games and they're 2-2, then you may get 30,000 UCF fans there. So it sets the stage for a great game. Both teams have a lot of work to do before you get there. UCF cannot take the game at TCU for granted. It's going to be a really hard football game. And then you come home and get Dion coming to the Sunshine State for a primetime game. So there's a lot of stuff before you get there. But it could end up being a real magical night. It could be one of those awkward nights for Florida if the season's not going well. It's a big deal. And even a Gator fan now has to admit it's a big deal just because of where their program's at and how important it is. And a loss to UCF would really rattle Florida fans. They'd love to win the game comfortably and say, look, little stepchild, you're not who we are. But it's a little bit different vibe this time.
Yeah, no question. Mark, thank you for your time, man. It's here, as you said. Practice began today. A bunch of schools, 16 over the next 3 days, with most of the chunk of them, I think 12 of them or so, maybe 11 or 12 of them starting their workouts on Wednesday, another handful, small couple of teams tomorrow. Thanks for your time, as always. Always appreciate your honesty and also your knowledge and history of UCF football and athletics. And I don't want you to, burn that food, so get off the phone and go take care of your dinner.
I just flipped the chicken breast and the sausage right now. Anytime, guys, look forward to chatting with you again throughout the season. Take care.
Voice of UCF Athletics, Mark Daniels, with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, so in '99 they played in Gainesville, UCF in Florida for the very first time. Spurrier versus Mike Krushik, 58-27 Gators, and that was, they were riding pretty high already in Gainesville in '99. Then again in 2006, Urban Meyer versus George O'Leary in Gainesville, 42-0, and then the Gasparilla Bowl a couple years back, 29-17 UCF. As you mentioned, Florida was undergoing a bunch of changes and all that, but that didn't matter. That was their first win over Florida in 3 tries, and that was a big deal. And so that was the last meeting, and now they'll meet again this year. But as he said, you've got to face off with TCU first, and you've got Colorado as well. So those are games that are far more important, but I do think that's going to be potentially it's going to be a big game regardless. Even if both teams are 0-4 going into that game, it's still a big deal for both teams, or especially UCF. But, yeah, there's also the possibility that maybe it's got a little more juice to it because both teams start the season off on a good note. And, man, what an opportunity that is for UCF to roll into Gainesville and maybe go take a bite out of them in the swamp. All I know is one side's got a lot of hot seat talk surrounding them, and maybe they end up way better. Maybe DJ Lagway gets into the fold and becomes a superstar like right away or something. Maybe something happens where Florida's just better than we expect, but nobody's shying away from thinking that UCF's going to be a lot better. Like, everything we've heard is that UCF should be way better. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing Jefferson and Penny Boone and R.J. Harvey and how all of that backfield particularly comes together, especially if they have the blocking up front, because that could be, if you love watching teams run the football, that could be some nasty business right there. So, yeah, they've got some reasons for optimism and some good games early on that will definitely test them and hopefully only make them better for the stretch run. But, yeah, they're a very intriguing team.
Yeah, they are, and they're one of those that could be a game or two better and then kind of right there in that midsection. By the way, MC Gusto, I owe you an apology. I asked you to email me the question. I just texted Mark Daniels the question about the travel and the significance and all that. I will give you an answer hopefully by the end of the show. I just don't want him to burn the chicken on the grill. When we come back, Paul's back with us full time as far as with the show again tomorrow. His top 5 is next. TexasBeefHouse.com. Online auction coming up, not this week, but next, August the 6th or 7th, 6th and 7th. You can go to 7th and 8th, excuse me. You can go to Bid on Beef and get all the information you need, the catalog of what will be online. The auction is amazing. It's also kind of frenetic because I was a part of it just a couple of weeks ago and thought that by the time we wrapped up a show that I had 2 massive bone-in tomahawk ribeyes in my name, and somebody outbid me. It is August the 7th and 8th. You can go online, TexasBeefHouse.com for more information. And then they also have, pops up on the screen, Bid on Beef. All steaks are sold through auctions on Bid on Beef. We're talking Wagyu, farm-raised Angus cattle, Wagyu beef, and they have done it the right way, the Duvall family and TexasBeefHouse.com. Also, we've had this pretty much from the beginning. If you use the code word SICK'EM10, you get 10% off your order of $100 or more. It's now been changed to 365 Sports. That now is the code word, and you get 10% off an order of $100 or more. You can go to TexasBeefHouse.com or Bid on Beef. Their steaks are absolutely mouth-watering, delicious. The marbling of what they have, whether it's a New York strip, a flat iron steak, or ribeyes, they're just incredible. The way you want it, it's just delicious. TexasBeefHouse.com, live auction online, August the 7th and 8th. And when you go to the website, go to Bid on Beef, and they'll have the catalog ready for what you want at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Make this the summer event at Allen Samuels. Drive the all-new 2024 Grand Cherokee 4XE or Wrangler 4XE today. Lease payments start at just $589 a month or finance for 2.9% for 84 months. Experience legendary Jeep performance with cutting-edge hybrid technology. Hurry, only at Allen Samuels in Waco. See dealer for details.
Come by. Let's be friends. At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist's office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Hello again. Happy Monday. How am I doing this? Friday I said it was the Force. You don't believe in the Force. I'll just tell you. I'm like the amazing Kreskin. I'm a mentalist. I've got you fooled. I'm really in 2 places at once. I don't know how I'm doing it. I'm amazing Kreskin. I'm David Copperfield. I don't know. But we're continuing the preseason top 25 countdown, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use 365 Sports as your promo code and get 10% off. Today, let's jump in with numbers 15 through 11. Number 15, Kansas. Given the fact that we don't know anything about Jalen Daniels' long-term health, he says he's fine. I'll believe it when I see it, but I do think this is going to be a really fun team to watch. I think Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, the wide receivers they have that people don't even talk about enough, plus an improved defense. Jeff Grimes is the offensive coordinator there. This is a much better skill set group for his offense in the wide zone. Lance Leipold will put his touches on it. Kansas, again, another team that, the ball bounces their way. They could finish even higher than this. But again, this is the preseason. This is where they start out, not where they finish. Number 14, Clemson. This is the first really mean picture I've used. But Dabo made this. And I got to say, this is a segue. This is like, I'm going to jump out of it. I'll jump back in. I'll talk about Clemson's legitimate prospects when we come back after this tangent. Is he not the dorkiest coach? Like, who's dorkier, him or Brian Kelly? I don't know. But, the name, image, and likeness comments and this. I mean, look, he's an excellent, amazing, all-time great future college football Hall of Famer as a coach. There's no doubt about that. But what the hell, man? Come on. It's just weird. It's just weird. Anyway, to their actual team. Rant over. To their actual team, they'll be tough on defense. They'll be tough on offense. They will probably not light it up on offense like they have in the past because, no Will Shipley. Still don't really know what they're going to get out of the wide receivers. Cade Klubnik's been good but not great. Garrett Riley, year 2. We'll see. I don't think this roster is as up to snuff as they're used to, and this is a team that's used to being much higher than 14. I think this is about where they'll live, though, because in spite of this stupid dance he does, he's still a great coach, and he's still a great X's and O's on the field efficiency coach. His, old-fashioned views aside, he still wins most of the time, and most of the games they lost last year were really close. So this is a team that is a 9 or 10 win team, more than likely, this season, no matter what. Oops, sorry. Let's go back. And let's go to number 13, since I've already messed that little thing up. Number 13, Tennessee, Nico Imaliava. going to be super fun to watch. This is going to be a team that scores a lot of points. Can Josh Heupel's team get in the other team's way enough to keep every game from being a shootout? That remains to be seen. But Nico is a bona fide star in the making, and he'll be fun to watch in the offense in his first year as the full-time starter. You saw him in the bowl game destroy Iowa's defense. Destroy Iowa's defense in that game. And I expect to see him lighting up the scoreboard a little bit more. Tennessee probably a year away with him from really contending for the conference title, but they'll be hovering on the outside all year long. Number 12, Penn State. Got to see more from their offense and see what Andy Kotelnicki could do. But this could be a team that sneaks. I mean, they're 12th right now. If the season finishes and they're 12th, they're in the playoff. No matter what, that's what Penn State will be. But right now, I just need to see some playmaking on offense. I need to see some fun. I need to see some sparks. And I need to see that against teams that are as good as they are or better. That is Penn State's problem. They will physically maul you and turn you into mashed potatoes if you are below their station. If you are equal to above them, they will not. They need to match it athletically and get there. That first game against West Virginia is going to be a doozy, and if West Virginia wins this, I'll knock Penn State way down, and I'll put West Virginia way up, because that will change my perspective on a lot of things. Because West Virginia is going to be super athletic. And that's where Penn State might not be able to match them. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And finally today, number 11, Michigan. This is Jim Harbaugh hosting the trophy. Jim Harbaugh's gone. A lot of offensive talent is gone. But this is still probably one of the better defenses in the country. They're going to be solid and efficient. They just probably won't have the offense that they had last year. And I'm not totally sold on them being a playoff team, but they're about the 11th best team in the country to start out. And will still win a lot of games. And the schedule is tougher. Heck, Texas is coming to town. And we still have a couple of top fives to go before we bring them up, because they are very highly ranked. But Michigan should be still pretty good. Again, a little bit lower than this is probably fair as well. Probably not much higher. But I think that 11 is about the spot for Michigan. That's going to do it for us. Smokey and Craig wrap it up. I'll be back on the air with you guys tomorrow once I get back from Nashville. I hope that you had a good time without me and that Craig and Smokey didn't make you cry. But if they did, I apologize, and I'll make sure they both sit in the corner and have a timeout. They're here to wrap it up right now.
No, we're not sitting in the corner. No, he's been on a 4-day extended weekend. Craig's going to be off next week, by the way, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll sneak in a couple of extended weekends between now and the start of the high school football season, college football season, and then, of course, the NFL season, too. Tomorrow, Jacob Zeno, UAB quarterback, used to be at Baylor. Tomorrow, good chance DeQuan Finn, Baylor quarterback's a part of the show, and a few other nuggets for tomorrow, too. Craig, thank you very much. Anything to put a bow on it today?
No, I mean, it's just a good starting off another week. I definitely feel like we're in that little crevice of the schedule now where it's like agonizingly long away, but it's close enough that you can taste it, especially with practices starting this week for a lot of teams. That's going to be a lot of news and notes and things to pay attention to that we otherwise have been without for a while, so that'll be great and start to really ramp up the drums of the season even more so. Kind of had the video game stretch, the media day stretch, and now it's time for practices to kick off. So, you know, we've previewed, and we got some more of that to go. But man, we're almost there, guys. We're almost there, and in a month we'll be talking about results, and that's going to be freaking awesome. But yeah, you can start to feel it a little bit, and that's exciting.
Yep, the chat room was fired up back and forth. Appreciate those of you who were a part of that, the text line too. Thanks to those who watch us that are not a part of as far as the YouTube channel, but watching us on @365SportsY2 on Twitter. There's a nice chunk of you there too. We appreciate our sponsors and some pretty darn good news with some new sponsors that are about to start the show effective August the 1st, which of course is coming up on Thursday. Retired stockbroker, why is Craig the Dragon off? Surfing in the Brazos? No, called vacation just to decompress before all hell
next
breaks
week,
loose.
yeah. Just haven't had vacation yet, and the time I was off, it was for funerals. So good to just go and get like regular relaxed time in before the season starts. So yeah, still got 4 more shows till we get to that point, and a podcast tomorrow with Grayson. But yeah, looking forward to getting that in before we go through the craziness.
MC Gusto, I text Mark Daniels, who was wrapping up cooking food on the grill, about your question about it seemed like it's an overlooked part about how their travel will be less this year, plus they have 1 additional home game in Orlando. Mark did text me back. Could be huge. It took its toll last year. Iowa State midseason, Arizona State late only, real long trips. Real long trips this year. Boise on the road replaced with Florida in your backyard is a big difference.
That's
so Mark
a huge
Daniels
difference.
gave us
Boise,
a response to MC Gusto's question.
Boise versus Gainesville, yeah, that's a massive difference for them on the schedule that 1 week alone. So.
Wasn't that Boise game the one that ended with a 50-something yard field goal in the pouring down rain or something?
Yeah, it got weird.
Yeah. Garrett, thank you very much. Great stuff.
Sir.
Emery Winters working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway. Paul's back tomorrow for Craig Smoke. I'm David Smoke. Thank you for being a part of the show every day or whenever you can. Good night on 365 Sports.